and the disruptions associated with the conflict potentially escalate, then I think that there could be a sharp nonlinear downside for markets as they price in those new realities. I think that, as you said, the market's very much leaning towards something being announced, likely over.
Well, that is a possibility, though, because the president, Pete Hegseth, has spoken about that. If there's no deal, then they can go right back to escalation. What kind of drawdown would we see, say, Monday morning, if talks truly break down Islamabad this weekend, if they happen?
It's difficult to predict just how adversely the markets would react. We have seen during periods when the situation looks more severe, the oil price traded 110. And so if you had a full break of these negotiations, to see it pop back up to $110 a barrel seems to be a reasonable hypothesis. But to be clear, if we have 8 to 10 million barrels of oil offline for an extended period, fill in the blank as to how high oil prices could go. That could be a world with $150, $200 a barrel of oil. And in some models, I can even get numbers that are much higher than that.
Nathan, it's good to see you. Nathan Sheester, Citi, thanks for reacting to that breaking news just moments ago. Certainly the bar got higher for talks going into the weekend. Let's give you an update on that story, that breaking news. With your Bloomberg brief, Scarlett Fu has more. Hi, Scarlett.
Hi, John. Yeah, this hour we learned that the U.S. and Iran are negotiating a peace plan with one point under discussion, the U.S. releasing $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds in return for Iran giving up its enriched uranium stockpile. This is according to Axios. The talks are expected to take place in Islamabad on Sunday. Meantime, Netflix shares are lower in the pre-market after the streamer's second quarter forecast missed analyst estimates. Netflix also announced that its co-founder and chairman, Reed Hastings, will step down from the board after 29 years. And SpaceX is moving up its vesting schedule for employees. Sources telling us here at Bloomberg it could come as early as next week as the company prepares for its IPO, which, as you'll recall, is targeting a valuation of more than $2 trillion. And that is a Bloomberg brief. John.
Scarlett, thank you. Thank you for this morning. One of the best there, Scarlett Fu. Up next on the programme, setting you up for the day ahead. Plus, we'll catch up with Jason Thomas of Carlyle, with stocks looking for their third consecutive week of 3% plus gains. That conversation up next.
Nationwide has strategies built to help you save time.
It's a game changer.
Their timely market insights help simplify conversations with your clients. But sometimes actions speak louder than words.
Crushed it.
Own the thing. Behind the thing. Behind the next big thing. Invest in the backbone of the global economy. Brookfield. Own what's next.
The browser has become the center of modern work. Many employees spend their entire day in the browser, but now Gemini and Chrome meets the end user where they are. With one click, you can get information synthesized for the context that you need. And you don't have to leave that tab. We are giving IT teams the controls to make sure that that data is safe, while bringing the best of Google AI into the browser to ensure that employees are supported in their day-to-day work.
things we needed to do for cost management and for scale was clearly move to the cloud. We had to choose the right partner. So we engaged with Unisys. Over the first 5 years of our partnership, our goal was to save 35 million. We not only achieved that, we exceeded it by a significant margin. We don't just want somebody to run our organisation. We need someone to help transform our organisation.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble and on YouTube and simulcasting on X-Spaces. Thank you for joining. You can also watch the live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Please help support the work that I do by sharing the links and asking your social media to follow me. You can follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble, TikTok, X, GETTR, Substack, Patreon. And if you want to help support the work, you can purchase the products on my store. I have ebooks, supplements, and also course material on immunology and pulmonology. You can also donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You'll be a paid member to my Substack channel or my Patreon channel. All these videos are for free for me to inform you how to improve your health, but also how to navigate through the news, especially for your household finances. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it if you do help and support the work that I do. All right. The big news is that maybe there'll be a de-escalation of tensions between the United States and Iran. There's supposed to be a ceasefire negotiation at a more detailed level this weekend. We'll see what happens. Oil is starting to go down. Oil right now is trading at $83 a barrel, and UCO is trading at about 37. Natural gas is trading at 2.656, and there's some news right now that's breaking. U.S. considers $20 billion cash for uranium deal. And there is a big move, right? Just as we're speaking, there's a big move in oil right now. Japanese yen has also started to strengthen. The euro has also started to strengthen. It's at 118. So there's definitely breaking news happening. So let's just listen into Bloomberg here for a second.
On reports, the US and Iran will be holding talks in Islamabad on Sunday, and maybe some of that energy will start flowing through the Strait of Hormuz in a much bigger way. Jason Thomas of Carlisle writing, markets are increasingly being shaped by national security priorities. For investors, that means being selective and leaning into areas with real demand, pricing power, and structural tailwinds. Jason joins us now for more. Jason, good morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
What a crazy 6-7 weeks this has been in markets. How are you reflecting on things?
Well, I think that you have three elements as to why we've seen this rally. First, of course, is just this stated willingness to reach a negotiated settlement. So keep getting good news on that front, I would say. Secondly, the resilience of the economy. Our portfolio data through 31 days of the conflict, so March 31st, showed real demand growth in the United States of 2.7%. Obviously, good implications for earnings. So I think people have taken comfort in that. And third, I think the underappreciated element here has been the way that markets were, I think, wrong-footed or misapprehended what was happening in short-term interest rates. You had that period of time where people interpreted the price shock that was coming as essentially forcing the Fed's hand to raise rates. That was never the intention. It was never likely. What happened during that period of time was essentially an unwind and some of the aggressive bets on a Fed that would be cutting early and often. At the start of the year, if you looked at options on futures, 7 rate cuts were priced as equally likely as 1 rate hike. As some of those trades got flushed out, some of the steepener trades got flushed out, you had a jump in the 2-year yield, you had a jump in those forward interest rates. Those trades, that unwind really came to a conclusion about March 30th. No surprise, that is actually the date of the nadir in the recent market.
Well, and so this is one tailwind for the recent rallies that you've seen short-end interest rates come down as people reassess that. I just wonder longer term, though, is there a sense that people are underappreciating still the level of inflation that's going to be in the system for a long period of time as we face off with supply shocks that are more likely going forward?
Well, the Fed has been willing to tolerate 3% inflation for quite a long time. What's another 100 basis points among friends? So no, so when you think about inflation, where it's likely going, you have I would expect 100 basis point shock in Q2 that's going through the system. But I think the expectation is that it's not continued inflation, it's that prices will peak and then either stay where they are or come down.
Okay, what's going on here is that there's some big moves that are happening in the market at the moment, all right? So all commercial ships are allowed to go through the Strait of Hormuz now. There's supposedly going to be a discussion about a $20 billion exchange of uranium, all right, $20 million for the uranium that they have enriched. That discussion is going to take place on Sunday. Now, what has happened is that oil has precipitously dropped. Now it's at 82.56, that's WTI. And UCO is continuing to decline. It is now 37.15. Gush is declining. That's at about 35.3. DRIP is climbing, which is a short ETF for energy exploration. That's at 5.06. So there's a big climb there. 10-year Treasury price went up, and natural gas is going down. It's trading at 2.644. There's big moves in the currency market, so dollar is weakening, and risk is starting to go up. VIX is now trading at 1749, and the futures market for the S&P 500 is at 7,130. Okay, so there's some this news is radically going to change equity prices today. And we have for the short, for the ETF, for oil, SCO, that's trading at 857 at the moment. So there's a big move in oil right now. A radical move here based on this news that just came out. All right, we're gonna go back to Bloomberg, but please help support the work that I do by going to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer. Get the lignans. This will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, help with your endocrine system and your immune system, also your cardiovascular system. And with good blood flow, you also improve your brain function. Vitamin B12, super important to rev up your metabolism, your cellular metabolism, increase your ATP levels, and to help to protect your neurons. This is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. You need to protect your neurons. You need to increase your cellular metabolism and produce more ATP so you have more energy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
What kind of vessels are we talking about? Are these Iranian vessels? Are these vessels that are paying a toll, that are close to the regime? Or is this for all commercial vessels to go in and out of Strait of Hormuz? But it is a step in the right direction, and it'll certainly be a test for this White House on what they want to do with this information going into negotiations on Sunday.
Quite a series of headlines over the last hour or so, driving this equity market out to new highs, closing at record highs yesterday, and added some weight to the rally so far this morning. Jason, good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Coming up on Monday, reaction to the talks if they take place over the weekend. We'll speak to Cameron Dawson of New Edge Wealth, Julia Sam of New Century Advisors, plus we'll speak to Mark Lehman of Citizens and Stephen Parker of JP Morgan.
We're going to listen to this Al Jazeera's take on this.
The talks Helen. Yeah, I mean, as we've said in the last couple of days,
to be staged, that you do this, then we do that. If this happens, then that happens. And that could well be what we're seeing, a sequencing of things moving towards more significant talks with Iran. one of Iran's demands was, of course, that there was a ceasefire in Lebanon. The United States may well have said, "We have nothing to back this up," but certainly, if you read the tea leaves, it suggests, look, if we get the ceasefire in Lebanon, then we open up the Strait of Hormuz. The big question mark over all of this, of course, is what America does next, because they have the blockade of Iranian ports. They've said that nothing is coming in or coming out. They've interdicted a number of vessels that have already made that journey. They have stopped a couple of oil tankers that were coming out of Iran in the last 24 hours. So what do they do next? Is this part of the sequencing, or does that stay in place because they believe that's an important pressure point for Iran and also for those who support Iran or do business with Iran, the likes of China, to get them to the negotiating table and then to deliver on a peace deal? Now, I don't think there's any issue with getting Iran to the negotiating table. It's what's actually agreed when they get there and whether or not they are actually open to some of the US demands. But clearly, the US has been open to what Iran has been saying, because they have said, look, we want a ceasefire in Lebanon as part of it. That has been delivered by and large. But then the next step obviously was you open up the Strait of Hormuz. We might be reading too much into this, but it tends to be in these things sequenced events, and certainly that's the pattern that we're seeing here.
Okay, obviously, like you say, a sequence of events. We know that Islamabad in Pakistan, they've been gearing up for a second round of potential talks. A lot goes on behind the scenes, obviously. Is there any indication from the White House that they might be getting ready to re-engage with Iran in negotiations?
Well, certainly not in the coming days. I mean, everything that we're seeing in public does not suggest that is happening. By this time last week, J.D. Vance was already on his way to Islamabad. Today, he's not. Marco Rubio could have been on his way to Islamabad. Today, he's not. Those things aren't happening, but they can happen very quickly. And as you say, as we've seen from the events of the last 24 hours, things can happen very quickly. There was the meeting on Tuesday at ambassadorial level between Lebanon and Israel. There was talks that there might be a chat between the leaders on Thursday. Donald Trump fueled that himself by sending out a Truth Social post. But behind the scenes, things were happening. There was the conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. There was the conversation with Joseph Aoun, the Lebanese president. And while all of that was going on, the State Department was working behind the scenes to draw up a memorandum of understanding. Essentially, this is the template for how a ceasefire in Lebanon would work for both the Israelis and the Lebanese. So all of that could be going on behind the scenes, but certainly public-facing. We're not seeing anything that suggests that J.D. Vance is about to leap on Air Force 2, the vice presidential jet, and head to Islamabad. The other thing to remember, of course, is that Donald Trump said yesterday that if he thought there was going to be a deal, he himself would go to Islamabad. He's currently in the west of the country here in the United States. He was in Nevada on Thursday, and he's going to be in Arizona on Friday. He's not making preparations to head to Pakistan anytime soon.
Okay, thanks so much, Alan. Stay with us. Just want to bring that breaking news.
So right now, Brent crude is just above 40. It's like not just above 90. It's like 90.44. And WTI is trading at 83.09 at the moment.
Open for the remaining period of the ceasefire on the coordinated route as already announced by Ports and Maritime Organization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I'm going to bring in Tawhid Asadi now. He joins us from Tehran. And what else has Arachi had to say?
Well, actually, this is a message that he posts on his X account that we heard, and obviously this is very much important. He's talking about the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and he's talking about opening of it to commercial vessels, while previously we had it from different Iranian officials that Strait of Hormuz is going to be open for everyone, but closed to our. The reality on the ground was that the traffic of the transit across the Strait of Hormuz over the past weeks was, I can say, unprecedentedly low compared to the normal time. And practically speaking, we saw a very limited number of ships and vessels going through the trajectory of this important and this geostrategically significant choke point. And we know that, speaking of that, we earlier heard from the Iranian side that they are looking for a new regime of management across the Strait of Hormuz, a sort of selective approach by the Iranians. They said that it's going to be open for everyone, but not our adversaries. And right now, this is a new statement, very much important. And obviously, added to that is another important statement that we actually have been hearing from time to time from Iranians about the plans to impose actually charges and transit fees for the ships and vessels going through the trajectory of this choke point. And we know that, speaking of the role of this strait when it comes to the energy market, when it comes to the security context across the region, Iran is trying, in a sense, to use it as a leverage, as a bargaining chip when it comes to negotiations down the road. And speaking of that, it is obviously an important development because following the failure of the previous round of talks, we heard from the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that most issues are settled down. However, there are several sticking points, and reportedly, Strait of Hormuz was one of them. Iran said that it is conditioned upon a sort of comprehensive ceasefire across the region, particularly including the Lebanese front, and right now, following the developments that we hear about from the Lebanese front, it's a sort of response, strategically speaking, from Tehran that could or could not pave the way for a further facilitated approach when it comes to negotiations. We know that there are other sticking points, it goes without saying, a long list, which includes basically the war, strategically speaking, from Tehran that could or could not pave the way for a further facilitated approach when it comes to negotiations. We know that there are other we can rest assured that there are other points of contention when it comes to any potential rapprochement. However, we have to keep in mind that this is certainly a very important positive step forward when it comes to a possibility of negotiated settlement between Tehran and Washington. Whether or not at the end of the day there is going to be a next round of talks is a very important question. There is no official confirmation in that regard from Tehran. However, we know that diplomatic engagement goes on, as we've got it from Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi during his phone calls with many counterparts beyond the region and across the region. And also Tehran says that it continues its contacts with Islamabad, a sort of mediated communication with the United States. That's something that they call. And this could pave the way for a next round of talks in Islamabad or elsewhere. Tehran previously said that Islamabad is their priority for such a talks to be held. But still, we have to keep in mind, all in all, that we're dealing with a very fragile, very brittle situation in that regard. Whether the two sides can, at the end of the day, translate this opportunity, seize this opportunity to come up with a diplomatic solution remains to be seen. While on the other hand, we have to keep in mind that also today, we've got a statement from IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, saying that the army of the country, the IRGC, are already fit their fingers on trigger for another round of confrontation in case negotiations fail.
Okay, thanks so much, Towhid, for that. We will no doubt come back to you with more developments.
We're going to go to Bloomberg really quick here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get an MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. It has to be an oil for proper absorption. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C in terms of an antioxidant. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. By doing that, what you're going to be doing is soaking up free radicals. Your energy levels in your cell and your tissues will improve. You're helping the health of your mitochondria. You're going to have more ATP, which is an energy source for your cells. Your immune system and your endocrine system will improve. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation, and soaking up free radicals for your neurons, for your brain, your neurons will improve. They will have more ATP, the mitochondria will be better, you're going to produce more neurotransmitters, the neural network will be better. So you're going to be thinking better, you're going to have better memory, and less inflammation, and the cells, your neurons, will actually be healthier. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. I've been taking C60 for 10 years, every day, teaspoon a day. All right, let's listen to Bloomberg here.
Open and ready for full passage. Thank you! Exclamation point. Paul, Brent crude under $90 a barrel.
Margaret Brennan, host of Face the Nation CBS Television News. What is the script for this weekend? What is the agenda this weekend, if you haven't already ripped it up, Margaret?
Right. Well, we are tracking what is clearly very dynamic diplomacy with Iran. Just yesterday, you had that breaking news of a 10-day pause of Israel's bombing campaign in Lebanon, and this attempt to get a broader agreement between the states of Israel and Lebanon, who are both struggling to contain Hezbollah. That is something the United States says is separate from the Iran diplomacy. Iran disagrees. Iran says they won't do this next meeting, they won't go any further until there is a ceasefire in Lebanon. So yesterday, that was a big deal that President Trump did get at least a 10-day pause. He bought more time. This appears to be a trade here. Look what just happened. I mean, the Iranian foreign minister said, okay, you did that, here, the strait is open. What comes next? That's what's unclear. Are we looking for J.D. Vance to swoop in and hammer out a nuclear deal, in which case papering that thing in technical terms takes a long time. That is not a done by Tuesday scenario. Remember, that's when the Iran ceasefire is set to end on the 21st. So we're going to be tracking that.
Hopefully we're done by Sunday morning for Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan at CBS, and of course across the CBS television network. It is Face the Nation Sunday on the CBS network. Sunday on Bloomberg Radio, hugely popular at 2 p.m. in New York, in Washington, D.C., and of course in Boston, 92.9 FM as well. Look for that Sunday this weekend. This just out a headline, the dollar spot index erases all the gains since the war began. So the future's up 68. There we are. Sarah Hunt was on her phone during our conversation.
Trades on.
She said, you know, double, triple leverage, dive in. Why don't you bring in Sarah Hunt, who's been patient?
Absolutely. Here in our studio, we appreciate that. Sarah Hunt, Chief Market Strategist at Alpine Saxon Woods. You know, Sarah, one of the interesting things about 2026 year to date is the rapid and seemingly reasonable decline in the equity markets when the war broke out, but then the velocity of the rebound to now this will be, setting new highs yet again here. Did that surprise you? What does that tell you? How are you thinking about that?
I did have a thought this morning that you end up with a crisis, and then just resolving the crisis means you can go higher, whether or not, I mean, if you took that out of this year entirely, markets would probably be higher anyway, just because of the earnings front, and we'd be talking about a whole lot of other things that we were worried about before. But the resolution of this, and the possibility that this resolution makes things a little bit better, I think has got everybody quite giddy today.
Futures up 70, Dow futures up 604. We're going to get a 16 handle on VIX. We're not there yet. Philip Carre, legendary Pioneer Funds, Boston, lived to a ripe old age of 102, 104, 106, something like that. And he would say the bright lines of inflation assist. Are we pricing in a nominal GDP, maybe with a lot of inflation in it, that's going to be sprightly for revenues, and so we're underestimating revenue growth into 2027?
We may be underestimating revenue growth, but if we do get that inflation, you're probably also underestimating the cost side. So I'm not sure how much that goes together, because for corporate earnings, a lot of it's going to be about margin. But
do you see margin erosion?
Not yet. I mean, and we really haven't seen it. And that's sort of amazing. And that's one of the reasons that there are all sorts of other tensions, especially on the labor front, right? Because you're not seeing any wage growth that's enormous relative to some of the growth that's on the revenue side.
I got to keep doing data here, Paul. I'm being so rude to Sarah. Why don't you pick up the interview, because she hates me. Brent crude, an 87 handle, down 11 West Texas Intermediate and 83 handle. Sarah, I'm sorry.
I can never
Markets
hit you.
are moving here, so we'll stay on top of it. Let's get away, Sarah, and pretend like we're investment professionals. Let's look at fundamentals here. Earnings, they still matter, I'm told. What have we seen so far? What do you think the market needs to see in this earnings cycle?
Well, what's interesting is let's see how this plays out, because right now this drop in oil prices is very positive for that, because one of the concerns that we had was that people were baking in the growth from earnings that were coming from some of the tech spend and some of the other areas, but not worrying about the potential erosion from higher energy prices. I think you're going to end up still with some more premium in an oil price than you've seen for the last couple of years. But if we can get oil back, if we can get down here and stay down here in the 80s, that's not so terrible. Those earnings were already looking like they were going up in the teeth of this war, which was sort of amazing. And I think that's also why the rebound in the stock market over the last 8 to 10 days was partially on the back of people bumping up earnings estimates.
Interesting. So what screens well? I mean, can we go back and screen stuff, whether it's factors or sectors, or is it just too much crosswinds out there?
Well, interestingly, the market multiple had come down a little bit, even as the earnings were going up. So you could argue that the market was trying to grow into those earnings. And so I think that there are places where you've seen a lot of money come out of the Mag 7 because of the big spend that they were doing, but there's some valuations that aren't too terrible. I didn't get a chance to look at the Netflix earnings, but I mean, Netflix may be experiencing a pump, but it's generally speaking, I think people were happy that they didn't end up in that merger.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned with the whole Netflix thing. So let's go to CNBC here.
Down out of Anthropic, as we should. It's one of the more important companies, period, at this point. Its revenue growth rate, the likes of which we have rarely, if ever, seen. As we've also said, starting at $9 billion at the beginning of this year, revenue run rate exceeding $30 billion. Where will it go? Of course, by the end of the year, if this continues. Now, that said, new model comes along from a competitor. You never know what's going to happen, Jim.
If you were in that Kalshi world, you would.
Well, this is the strange thing about Anthropic's model is that now it has shown the vulnerabilities of different systems, the banking system, our energy grid system, and that other competitors, especially our adversaries, can create these models to find vulnerabilities and exploit those vulnerabilities. So cyber warfare has increased. There is going to be an arms race in cyber warfare now because of AI. It's getting to the point where these AI companies need to be regulated. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lemongrass structural nail silver soaps and the peppermint version. These soaps will help with your skin pores, and it'll help to neutralize because it has the structural nail silver. It's very high quality soap. Use it every day. Please go to my store and get a few bars for your household. And vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important. Why? Because it's a gene expression cofactor. Your cells will perform better. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium. If you do resistance training, it's going to help to build denser bone. Vitamin D3 also helps with your cardiovascular health. And vitamin D3 is super important to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. That's why you want to take vitamin D3 during the cold season. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system. But magnesium also helps the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 will work better when you stack it with magnesium. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, boost up your immune system, improve the efficacy of vitamin D3, and magnesium will improve your brain function. Super important. So please go to my store, use discount 5 to save some money, all caps, discount 5, and you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Back to Al Jazeera, because I really don't care about Netflix.
It's all saying that from now on, Iran plans to actually impose a new regime of management over the Strait of Hormuz, and that includes imposition of tariffs and transit charges for ships and vessels and oil tankers trying to go and transit through the trajectory of the Strait of Hormuz. And again, something interesting, in the post by Abbas Araghchi is that he says everything should be in coordination with the Iranian side. In particular, he says that on the coordinated route as already announced by ports and maritime organization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that brings us to something that we already heard from IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, a couple of days ago. They came out to announce a new pathway for ships very close to the coast of Iran. Whether this reopening is going to be on the basis of the former pathways or the new pathway announced by IRGC a couple of days ago is another controversial point. And on that, we know that, as I mentioned earlier, Tehran is trying to use the Strait of Hormuz as a point of leverage, as a point of pressure, and obviously it knows the role of the strait when it comes to actually the geostrategically significant place that they are dealing with, and the role that it has when it comes to the global economy, energy market at a larger scale. And also, we know that, speaking of the context of the talks between Iran and the United States, the Strait of Hormuz was one of the most critical ones, but again, not the only one, as we're dealing with other complicated issues when it comes to a negotiated settlement. Again, back to the first point, we are dealing with a very fragile and very brittle situation. This is obviously a very first and foremost important step forward, but whether or not this is going to be a continuation of diplomatic engagement, paving the way for a long-lasting peace, or this is just a temporary fix, remain to be seen, and we are following the developments to see if there is going to be another chance for negotiations between the two sides. And also, we have to keep in mind that the military side, again, has got its own very strong rhetoric from Tehran, saying that in case of a failure of negotiation, there is a preparedness for another round of confrontation.
Okay, thanks so much, Toda Sadi, for us there live in Tehran. Well, the latest announcement on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz comes after a ceasefire in Lebanon. Israel agreed to the 10-day truce after pressure from US President Donald Trump. Families are returning to bulldozed homes in southern Lebanon after weeks of conflict, but they're being warned the truce may not hold. Sana Hodder reports from Navatir in southern Lebanon.
Destruction in the south. Hoida returned to find her home in ruins, like many other Lebanese people. They've returned after the U.S. brokered a temporary 10-day truce with Israel. Navatir was among the areas Israeli forces repeatedly targeted with strikes during 46 days of conflict. Some didn't have time to escape.
No one really knows if this ceasefire will hold. You just can't be sure, because you can't trust Israel and the United States.
Their return, even with the uncertainty about what comes next, is being framed as a victory. Many of the more than 1.2 million people displaced across Lebanon support Hezbollah. Families were holding pictures of their sons, husbands, brothers who fought the Israeli military as they invaded southern Lebanon. The Israeli military.
Friday, folks. Yeah. We say good morning across this nation. Thank you for listening the way you choose to listen to us. Good morning, 99.1 Nathan Hager Radio in Washington. A busy weekend for Washington. Bloomberg this weekend with David Gurrow. Look for that, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's Bloomberg surveillance. And now,
all right, so let's take a look at some of the other breaking news here. So listening about Mondani and the exodus of New Yorkers.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
So with me now is a New York guy, John Catsimatidis. Okay, let me see if I understand this.
If I hightail down to Florida and buy a mansion down there, leaving me home a mansion in New York City worth $5 million, that mansion that stays in New York, that's going to be taxed. Is that right?
That sounds pretty right, because if you make Florida your home, they're saying, we don't want you to have a legal home in Florida and then we get nothing. And I think that's what they're trying to create. You know, but there's two things in our city. 2% of the people, we said that before, pay 48% of the taxes in New York City, New York State. And if those people reach the oh crap level or whatever, that's what the president says, oh crap, so I can say that. What happens? They're going to keep the exodus will keep going on. And we don't want the exodus to go on.
Mandami says that this threat of rich people leaving, that is imagined. That's his word. He basically said they're not going to leave.
Well, you want to know something? Maybe the billionaires won't leave, but the rich people will leave. That is the difference. The middle class that makes more than $500,000 a year, and there's a lot of them. If the exodus continues, you know who gets penalized? New York City, New York State has 500,000 employees. If they leave, guess what? The 500,000 employees will have a problem. They'll start laying them off, and that's who gets penalized. And the pensions will have a problem. And we want New York. There's two things that are not negotiable: the quality of life in New York. We want to be safe. We want to walk around safe, and we don't want to be any particular class should not be targeted. Why are you targeting it? I mean, that's why the pilgrims came to America.
But they got the money. The rich and the class that's got the money, and the rest, these socialists want it. They're going to take it.
Well, guess what?
I think it's wrong.
They might end up blowing up, and that's what the problem is.
Now, Mandami, he made I guess it was a surprising admission about the cost of what he sells in city-owned grocery stores. Watch this.
When it comes to the products that we will be selling at these city-run grocery stores, there will be an essential basket of goods that will be guaranteed at a cheaper price. And it's cheaper than what they're being sold at currently. I can't give you an exact example of the cost of a cucumber in our essential basket, but what I can tell you is that when New Yorkers come to city-run grocery stores, they will see a clear price differential when it comes to those essentials.
You run a successful grocery chain in Christie's. Can he sell a basket of basic items at a lower price than you or anybody else?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because they said that they're not going to charge any rent, and they're not going to charge. If you don't charge me any rent right now, I'll reduce prices 20% tomorrow morning.
You can do that?
Absolutely.
So he can.
Don't forget, we're paying the highest rent in the world. We're paying you're paying real estate taxes, the highest in the world, and then we're paying a tax on tax. We're paying commercial rent tax on top of the real estate tax. In other words, we're taxing the tax. I mean, and then we have congestion tax. I mean, it gets harder and harder to do business. We want to have lower prices. If we don't pay any rent, 20% tomorrow morning.
Okay, one last one for you. Secretary Bassett, he says he's looking towards gas prices this summer. He said you'll be in the $3 range sometime between June and September. You're an oil man. You give me a prediction, please, of the price of regular gas on July the 4th.
Oh, July the 4th. Was that 60 days away? Where were we? I would say it'd be once the war is over. If we succeed in 2 weeks, or what do we have left? 7 days, 8 days. If we succeed on peace with Iran, last time I was here, we went down $20 a barrel that morning. It'll go down another $20 a barrel, and I would say it'll be below $3.
The moment we get a peace deal with Iran, the price of oil goes down $20 a barrel, and therefore the price of gasoline will go down significantly.
Significantly, the next step.
We like that, John.
Thank you.
A lot. You can come back anytime you like, right?
As long as it goes down.
Yes, as long as it goes down.
He's going to have to accept it.
Okay,
So
there we go.
but it'll be a fun few decades ahead.
Sorry, when you go to an airport and you see like the USC field hockey team at 11 o'clock at night waiting on a delayed flight to go from Rutgers and Piscataway over to
Is the
Los
magic
Angeles.
still there of USC and UCLA, or is it so screwed up in college sports?
I run a podcast solo. No producer, no editor, no tech skills, just Riverside. I get high quality podcast recordings right from my room.
Hi, Martha. Iran was reportedly asking for a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon as part of its requirements for some type of peace deal with the United States. Now that the president announced that 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon yesterday, moments ago, the foreign minister of Iran announced that the Strait of Hormuz, behind me in the distance in the Persian Gulf, is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire. So, things apparently on the upswing here in the Gulf. We can report here in the UAE, there's been about a week of calm now. No incoming missiles or drones from Iran after weeks and weeks of almost endless attacks coming from Iran. Also, the U.S. State Department ended its shelter-in-place order for U.S. government employees in this country. Obviously, the State Department urging people to still take shelter if needed. And then, of course, behind me in the Gulf, we're on day 5 now of the U.S. blockade that apparently has been going down without any reported incident or major confrontation. In fact, CENTCOM says at least 14 vessels have heeded the United States commands to either turn back to the ports of Iran or not violate their blockade. Now, the latest update from CENTCOM also says that they've been escorting people around the blockade, and here's some audio that the United States released.
Motor vessel Molly, this is warship 112. We will be escorting you to your next port of call. Thank you for your cooperation. This is warship 112, stand by, 16.
And yesterday, the president announced that 10-day ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. In an update from Israel minutes ago, an official says the IDF remains in Lebanon to hold all the locations it has cleared and captured. The IDF writing the goal redefined the disarmament of Hezbollah through military or political means was and remains the campaign's objective to which we are committed. Currently, significant political leverage has been created through the direct involvement of the U.S. president and a commitment to this goal while applying pressure to the Lebanese government. Now, here in the United Arab Emirates, the U.S. State Department lifted that shelter-in-place warning for U.S. government workers.
All right,
and the UAE
let me just give an update on the markets here. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,086. I have a year-end target of 7,400 to 7,800 for the S&P 500. The VIX index is at 17.23, so there's less stress in the equity market. The dollar has weakened. The euro is at 1.18. The Japanese yen is trading at 158.4. Natural gas is trading at 2.635, and oil is trading at 82.33. During the pre-market session, oil started dropping precipitously because of the news announcement that the Iranians are allowing all ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz, all commercial vessels, and that they're supposedly the United States is offering $20 billion of seized money from the Iranians. They're going to give it back to the Iranians if they give up their 60% enrichment of uranium. Supposedly there's going to be some sort of discussion about the details of this, I think on Sunday. So right now, markets are very positive with the news. Now, Trump just mentioned that the U.S. Hormuz naval blockade will remain in full force. We just mentioned that. And another component to this is that the Israelis in Lebanon are not moving forward, but they're holding territory. So I think this is a tenuous truce or ceasefire, whatever term you want to use, but the markets are very optimistic about it, and there's big moves in the oil market, huge moves in the oil market.
victory over Iran. An official writing here, yes, Iran lost, and yes, the UAE won. We were subjected to more than 2,800 Iranian missiles and drones, and we shot down 96% of them. The American role after this war will be greater. This Emirati and Gulf partnership with Washington came after long years of relations, mutual trust, and joint investments. Now, back live here on the Gulf, we are, of course, monitoring the potential for a second round of peace talks, perhaps in Pakistan this weekend. Yesterday, the president said that those negotiations could be happening in Pakistan, and he even said there's a possibility that he may head there. But we'll continue to see what happens, because now that Iran has apparently relinquished its self-proclaimed control over the Strait of Hormuz, perhaps these peace talks do not have to happen in Pakistan, but we're tracking it hour by hour, and we'll keep you updated. Martha, Bill.
Yeah, very interesting statement from the Dubai.
That doesn't make any sense, because there's supposed to be discussions about them giving up their uranium. So I wonder if this is going to be a short-lived rally. Who knows?
That's Matt Ben.
Yeah, a lot of things popping by the hour. Just on the map over here, we just take it back to the Persian Gulf. This has been the area of the interest, really, for the entire world for the past 48 days. Let me show you this on the map now. These are the vessels in the Persian Gulf, all right? So in red, since the start of the war, these are the vessels that have been basically at a standstill in the Gulf, off the coast of Basra in Iraq, off the coast of Kuwait, many off the Saudi Arabia. Look how much they're bunched up around the United Arab Emirates. I mean, just so many of these ships have been stuck here. I want to swing over here and show you the impact of the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports. The blockade's only been in place for a couple of days, and right now you can argue this has been a success so far. This is Monday of this week, right, April 13th. This is Oman. Here is Iran. Here is Pakistan. And here is the line that the U.S. Navy drew for all vessels coming in and out of Iranian ports. All these vessels in red, they made a stop at an Iranian port for something, and the blue ships of the Navy blockade out here in the Gulf of Oman. Also a bit later on the same day, on Monday, you saw more red ships come out this way. That means they stopped at an Iranian port for something. They were all turned back. That was on Monday. Then on Tuesday, a similar pattern. The red ships, the vessels coming across that blockade line. In total, by the end of the day on Tuesday, we had at least 14 vessels that have been stopped by the U.S. Navy. And that's where we stand right now, at a stalemate. Former CIA Station Chief Dan Hoffman joins us now. Dan, good morning to you. I want to get your reaction on the breaking news. How do you analyze what we're hearing out of Tehran now?
I think that statement about the Strait of Hormuz is a significant confidence-building measure. It's the first steps, potentially, for a framework whereby we dial down our military involvement and get to the stage where we can have real diplomatic negotiations. We've started that process, but the negotiations, I think, are going to be painstaking. I don't have any hope that there's going to be an immediate agreement, but there is the potential for the framework for an agreement, whereby we see free passage through the Strait of Hormuz and the corresponding impact on the global economy and our economy here at home.
Dan, what do you think pushed us to this point? I mean, it's pretty clear that Iran has figured out, at least for one thing, as I see it, that they're choking off their own economy, that they have hurt themselves by trying to control the Strait of Hormuz, and that this blockade has been very successful in terms of isolating them.
Yeah, I think the blockade has been successful. I do think Iran has a high threshold for pain, especially when it comes to Iranian citizens. This regime obviously has no problem with violating their human rights and making their lives miserable. But what I think was hanging in the balance was a resumption of U.S. kinetic strikes. And what I think Iran really wants is a continuation of the ceasefire while negotiations carry on. I think that's what they really want. Now, the Trump administration delivered our own confidence-building measure by bringing Israel and Lebanon together for the first time in almost 50 years for a 10-day ceasefire, which was something that Iran wanted. So these are positive steps, but I think it's still tenuous. We need to see how transport actually happens today at the Strait of Hormuz, but there's reason for some guarded optimism right now.
There's no, just quickly, Dan, there's no indication that the movement has happened in terms of this uranium recovery or a promise from them to not enrich uranium or continue this program over many years. Is there?
No, and look, Iran has said for 20 years that they don't want a nuclear program, but of course, behind the scenes, clandestinely, they pursued one. The concern we have, of course, is the disposition of the 1,000 pounds of uranium that they have, and not just nuclear enrichment, but centrifuges, for example. This is where the devil's in the details of an agreement. If Iran were able to develop their centrifuges and we had a time-based moratorium on nuclear enrichment, say 15 or 20 years, then when that expires, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon. I think that's what the president is concerned about, and that's why I don't think he wants to agree to any sort of a time-based deal.
Okay, you mentioned Lebanon. Let's focus on that for a moment here, because these two leaders, they could have a handshake at some point soon. We'll see on that. The president shot this out on True Social with regard to Hezbollah. Acting in Lebanon for decades now. He said, I hope Hezbollah acts nicely and well during this important period of time. It will be a great moment for them if they do. No more killing, must finally have peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Dan, do you believe in southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah has had such a presence, can the Lebanese army effectively patrol that part of the country?
No.
Or do you see the possibility that the Lebanese military goes to war with Hezbollah?
They have to.
Yeah, so that's the key sticking point right there, Bill. I think Beirut and Tel Aviv, they would like to have an agreement. It's certainly possible that we could have diplomatic relations between Israel and Lebanon, and that would be a good thing. And it's building the capacity of the Lebanese armed forces. We've tried to do this for years, but we really need to dedicate ourselves, not just the United States, but with our European partners as well, so they can take the fight to Hezbollah. They should have a monopoly on the use of force in their own country. They should ensure that Iran does not use a terrorist proxy to inflict harm on other states like Israel. Right now, Israel has about a 6-mile swath of territory they're controlling in southern Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to carry on controlling that area. So again, this one's going to require some continued diplomatic work going forward.
All right, Dan, great to have you on. Instant reaction from Dan Hoffman. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe.
The big question is, will this hold? If it holds, then oil will continue to go down. If it doesn't, oil is going to go back up into the 90 range. Now, right now, WTI is trading at $81.41 a barrel. Natural gas is trading at 2.643. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients that's going to help multiple systems for your body: brain function, musculature, cardiovascular health, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, help with your immune system and your endocrine system. You take this every day and you're going to slow down the aging process, and you stack it with some of the other supplements that I have, like C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, lignans, the Max 35. You're going to synergistically slow down that aging process. Now, it's not just taking supplements, it's also about proper diet and exercise, stretching, balancing, learning new things, some sort of spirituality or mindfulness to help you to go into parasympathetic mode, drinking filtered water, staying away from processed foods. All these things work together for your body to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. This is very important to take every day. It's very comprehensive. It's very effective. In addition, you can stack it with or take separately the heirloom barley. You can stack it together or take it separately. It's up to you. Now, what this will do is detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. This is great for your immune system, cardiovascular system, even brain function. Why? Because you're soaking up free radicals, detoxifying, bringing down inflammation. When you do that, your neurons are healthier and less misfolded proteins take place, and therefore less amyloidosis. In addition, because this brings down inflammation, you'll be able to recover quicker after a workout. Or if you have joint pain, this will help to reduce that inflammation at the joint. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Like I said, you can stack it together for max benefit. Now, another thing is by stacking and doing some resistance training, you're actually controlling your A1C levels. You're able to control your blood glucose levels, which is super important, on top of all the other benefits that you get. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, get the heirloom barley, take it every day. Each container is a month's supply, and get healthy. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen into AI, frozen job market, dealing with college grads.
We're going to disrupt the labor market. We're going to allow, huge swaths of the workforce to not have jobs. And you also have, big public companies often bring up AI to explain layoffs. And that's creating all of these downstream consequences, essentially a backlash. There are a lot of young people, a lot of recent grads are feeling more anxious about their job opportunities because of AI. You're also seeing political opposition to data centers. You're seeing more candidates on both sides of the political spectrum, right. Sort of coming out against this, treating it as a sort of controversial thing that needs to be reined in.
I mean, Paul, you've been killing it. You've been working on Claude, haven't you? You got home and you doing Claude 3.5 right?
I'm cutting edge here. And just to that point, Max, Torsten Slock over at Apollo is out with a note here today. A new paper with a framework for understanding the impact of AI on the labor market. The authors find that 18% of all jobs in the U.S. are at high risk of automation. That's from the OpenAI economist. I sent that to you. That's real. And, the question, I guess, for a lot of folks is, how do I adapt to that? And that's probably a lot of
we don't. I mean, the truth is we don't know. I mean, there's a difference between potentially impacted and going to lead to layoffs. There are a lot of confounding factors. You sometimes have companies wanting to do a layoff, maybe because they overhired, maybe because they made some poor business decisions. And right now, you can sort of get instant tech credibility by claiming that you're doing it because of automation. So it's hard to know. And there are also signals pointing in multiple directions. You have on one hand, there's research suggesting that recent grads are more impacted. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is too important, Max, and you're the hipster here, so we got to go. I should mention Dow up 550 points, the VIX 17.7 for the markets surge. Okay. Here's what I got. AI solutions architect, minimum pay, $160,000. Technical product manager, minimum pay, $140,000. Full stack Vibe developer, that sounds like Max. Full stack Vibe developer, $110,000. I'm going to suggest the jobs are there, but the kids don't want to do the grunt work to nail Cursor or Claude 3.5 or the rest. What are you seeing in everybody's business? Do they really want to do the work?
I think that most college graduates would be thrilled to have a job that paid $160,000. I can't remember the exact.
Do they want to do the work?
I think there are questions about who is going to get those jobs, right? Yes, they want to do the work is the answer, Tom. But I think that not everybody is a Vibe developer. You said a bunch of words there, and again, these are not necessarily jobs that are going to recent graduates. And part of the frustration, right, is that you have those numbers sound pretty high. Some AI developers are making much more. I mean, we've lived through the cycle where Facebook, Google, and so on are doling out enormous contracts, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars.
Come on, there's a double E engineer from Stanford. Okay, forget about that. I'm saying, Paul, help me here. The kids come out of school, okay, they got a degree.
Right.
I can't get a job. My father would say, you got to lean over the desk and learn AI. Do you see that in your reporting on everybody's business?
What we see in our reporting is that the job market for recent grads is worse than it has been relative to the workforce historically. Historically, you're a recent grad, you have an easier time getting a job than the average person. Those entry-level jobs are easier to get. In this economic environment, I don't know if it's AI, and I think there are real questions about whether it is. It has gotten hard. And look, I don't know. I mean, I think there's always a tendency to look at younger generations and suggest, you know, that we did it better. I'm always hesitant to do that because I think, you know, I will say, I think when you talk to younger folks and you hear this anxiety, it's the same anxiety we all felt. It is really hard coming out of college and trying to start your life.
Okay. Max brought me to silence. Everybody's business. Can't say enough about it. Next check in Stacy Bannon Smith here. The Dow up 523 points. Too short a news flow.
I think what is happening is we have technology coming in that can automate jobs. Now, we've had a huge boom in the economy from the 1970s to now. I remember the 1970s very well. And the 1970s, what was happening, individuals that were coming out of college, they were pumping gas. They had problems getting jobs. And there was stagflation. You had inflation because of the Vietnam War. We were getting off of the gold redemption status that Nixon took us off of. There was problems with the Carter administration. You had the oil embargoes of 74 and 78. So, there was a lot of problems that were taking place. Unions were having difficulty with their negotiations, and individuals coming out of college had a problem getting jobs. Now, once we started to do computerization in the 80s and in the 90s, there were tons of new jobs that were taking place. So people that had an education and wanted to use computers could and grow your career. I mean, I benefited from it because of the computerization of engineering, in CAD, CAM, and, CNC and automotive design and all that stuff was available to me because of computerization. So, because these jobs were available in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of people were able to benefit from it, and the whole society benefited from it. You had a huge middle class that ended up getting into upper middle class because of this. Now, fast forward to 2026, we're creating systems that actually are reducing the number of people that are employed in the computerization of the economy that happened in the 80s, the 90s. So we're, in essence, coming full circle and getting back to the 1970s. And this is the reason why people are saying, well, wait a minute, these college grads are having problems. There's inflation, and the cost of living is an issue, and there's a lot of geopolitical risk. Now, those are all very similar to the 1970s. Now, the 1970s had double-digit inflation, and we didn't have energy security. We have energy security now, and inflation is somewhat tamed. But the cost of living in general is too high. And the computerization jobs that were created in the 80s and the 90s, those jobs are starting to be truncated, especially for new hirees, but also for older workers because of AI. So I think that it's the one big cycle. 70s were bad, the 80s, the 90s were really good. Then there was shipping high-paid jobs to India because of high-speed internet information to be sent over to India quickly. So there was a technology transfer that took place for about 10 years, from about 2000 to 2010, 2015. And then, we had the war in the Middle East that lasted for a long time and all this stuff. So I would say that AI is probably, there's a very high probability that AI will create the economy and have us come back to the 1970s as if we never had computerization, or had very little computerization. So the question is how will, just imagine what would have happened with further college graduates if we didn't have computerization in the 80s. So our economy has to adjust in a way where people are employed with this AI. Now, maybe jobs will drop because of AI, and then job creation will start to slowly go back to recent historical averages in terms of employment. I don't know. But I'm concerned that there's this big cycle that's happening that's having us move towards coming back to the future, to borrow a term, back to the future, which is back to the 1970s, because of AI diminishing jobs. It's very similar to what I remember in the 1970s. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35 or Cleanse. Cleanse is 30 parts per million, Max 35 parts per million, but you take it the same way. Take a teaspoon a day every day, swish in your mouth, gargle, about 20 seconds and swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity by neutralizing and your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. It will boost up your innate immune system. It's that simple. Take it every day. I've been taking Max 35 or Cleanse for over 6 years, every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, boost up that innate immune system and neutralize and improve your oral cavity. And by improving your oral cavity, you're also helping your cardiovascular health. And if you have arthritis or muscle pains from working out or pulled muscle or a sprain or even tension headaches, this topical agent you can use and it will relieve your pain within 90 seconds. Get the super strong relief, apply it on your skin where it hurts, and you'll get that relief, including arthritis. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the super strong relief. Alrighty. The S&P 500 is now trading at 7,100. We're at a record here, all right? I still have, because we don't know what's going to happen, because of the midterm elections and all this, I still have a target of 7,400 to 7,800 for the S&P 500. But at this moment, equities are doing really well, and oil is trading at $81.87. Bitcoin is trading at 77,500 or so.
And of course, really importantly, the political discussion with Joe Matthew. I do want to mention tomorrow. Do you think they're blowing up Bloomberg this weekend right now? I think so. Lisa Mateo and the team will have Bloomberg this weekend, 7 a.m. tomorrow, 7 a.m. Sunday as well. Elena Popina, I didn't think she'd show up. I mean, she's glued to the equity desk. Yeah. What's it like when we go up 680 Dow points? Do people switch to Tito's and Tane or, no, shots of tequila?
Everyone tunes into Bloomberg Radio and just listens.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, you can come back. We were talking to Amy Silverman about the short squeeze. You look at it from a different view. Define the short squeeze. People going, oops, I was wrong right now.
Yeah, so traders borrow the shares to sell them short. And then the stock market rises to the point where they have to close out those positions because their positions did not work out well. They sell those shares short. They borrow okay. So let me start that over. They have to buy those stocks. They have to buy those stocks at really high prices, which we categorically use for the gains. I'll give you an example. A Goldman Sachs basket of the 50 most shorted stocks in the S&P 500 is up 14% this week. That's the best week for the basket since 2023. So there is a lot of short squeeze happening in the fringes of the market.
I don't believe that bullshit. I believe in terms of equities, people are chasing it. They don't want to be left out. And more people are getting to the philosophy that if the market goes down, buy. retail and 401ks and IRAs and all, people are being conditioned that buy when it sells off, which is the right strategy because you will benefit in the long run. Now, you have tactical traders out there on Wall Street that are, doing this active trading with these portfolios, and they may have picked the wrong bet with this. But what's happening is that more people are getting conditioned that when the market goes down, buy so you can get that extra yield. And that's the right way to do it in terms of long-term horizon investing. So, and this is part of the reason why all these experts that keep on trying to push down the market when they think a recession is going to happen doesn't happen. And the market keeps on getting buoyancy because of the retail investors coming in and keep on buying. So there is actually a little fight that's happening between tactical traders on Wall Street and actually the retail investor. The retail investor is actually keeping the market up, which is a good thing. And that over time, the retail investor, as they're managing their portfolios personally and not letting other portfolio managers manage their money, the retail investor is controlling the market. And that's the way it should be. Not the professionals on Wall Street, because the professionals on Wall Street were playing games. But people are getting wiser and people are taking charge of their investments. So for the ones that were listening to me during this Iranian war issue, I told you what to do. And if you did what I told you, you made money. All right? Now let's think about how much money would you have made if you deployed capital at the time when I started telling you to do this. That was at about 6,500. And it's now trading at 7,100. So the S&P 500 has gained 600 points. So that means that you would have had a 9.2% return over a 6-week period. 9.2% return on your new deployed capital. If you follow my advice, you're going to get money. If you follow my advice, you will also improve your health. All you got to do is listen and just do what I tell you to do. For some reason, they're playing music. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. Resveratrol will boost up the health of your mitochondria by soaking up free radicals. You'll have more energy. You'll have youthful gene expression. You'll also be able to get rid of cells that need to go into senescence. If you have cells that stop dividing and they're just staying there in your tissues, they collect garbage. That garbage is called lipofuscin. You don't want that. It causes damage to your tissues. Your tissues don't perform as well. You want to get rid of that. So this will help to get rid of those senescent cells. In addition, resveratrol will help the basal layer of your skin. And you'll get youthful gene expression with resveratrol. It stacks really well with C60. And a great neurostack that I have is Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate on tasks. It'll improve your cognition. You're going to be thinking faster, and you will also improve your memory. And the dendritic connections between your neurons will improve. So this is a great neurostack. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. And by doing that, you're improving your brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
After earnings missed and Chairman Reed Hastings announces he will leave the board in June, down more than 9%. And it's another Supreme Court opinion day. We are awaiting a potential decision this hour on President Trump's authority to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook. Of course, we'll bring that to you, any headlines, as soon as we get them, if we get them. But David, I wanted to kick it off with the consumer, as we often do, because we now know how tax returns are looking and tax refunds are looking, and they are up. And this was expected because of the changes in the One Big Beautiful Bill and the fact that money is going to get returned to people. So we do have some numbers and some charts. So here's Look 2026. It's the top line. And you can see we're tracking a lot higher than we have been in recent years. So they're up 14% year over year at this point. You know, how that compares to expectations, Morgan Stanley actually expected a lot more, 15 to 25% increase. They're the ones we took the chart from, but the average refund is up 11%. So that's $346 per return. About 75% of refunds are normally paid out by now. So that gives you a good sense of where we're tracking. It should be good. It should be stimulative for the economy. The only but here is oil prices are higher and gas prices are higher. So the question, I think, for economists and investors is how much of this bump gets offset by those higher gas prices.
Although they don't seem to have been hurting consumers that much in terms of their ability to want to spend, not to mention, of course, as we'll get to in a moment, the dramatic plunge in oil prices today, Sarah.
Well, you asked about the gas prices, right? Yeah. And I wanted to zoom in a little bit because I said that they were off the highs and they've been coming down a little bit.
Yesterday, you didn't like when I challenged you on that.
Well, just look in the last month, and I think you have to. Overall, we're a lot higher, of course, but look at the last month.
Well, that's what I said. We were down, and then I sort of
We're down. We're down a little bit. We're off the highs, but yes, we're still above $4 a gallon.
Yeah,
so
that's that may change soon if this recent plunge holds.
It should come down more because it should it reacts, to the price of oil with a little bit of a lag. So that definitely should happen. I would just say that New York Post, I don't know if you saw the cover of the Post today.
I don't actually see the hard copy of the Post very often. I didn't even know they still had it.
So their workers rejoice as Trump's tax law bumps tax refunds 11% to average $3,462.
Very nice. I usually go for the back. Big sports.
The back.
Yeah, that's the sports section.
Yeah, but they have such good covers.
They're known for.
They're
Knicks game 1 tomorrow, Sarah, just so you know.
What is?
Knicks, the opening of the playoffs tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I'm sure my children know that.
Yeah.
We're kind of in baseball mode with the kids, not the professionals.
All right. So they obviously highlight that as well. What does it all mean? Actually, what I'd love to get from you is a sense in terms of this plunge in oil prices. And we saw rates coming down a bit. Home builders, for example, Jim pointed out the stocks are already up today. Does it make it easier for an incoming Fed chair? Should we soon get him to lower rates?
Absolutely. I think that the Fed chair could have made the case to lower rates even with the price of oil high because the core inflation has been a little bit softer than expected. And you could make an argument that you can look through the headline and look through the volatile food and energy prices, especially geopolitical oil shocks. But this makes it even easier. Even Treasury Secretary Bannon this week said you can understand the Fed wait and see attitude to see how the higher oil prices filter through the economy. And there are still questions. I mean, it doesn't mean it's, not going to have an impact more broadly. Diesel prices, fertilizer prices, industrial prices that run on this stuff, electricity prices. So that's sort of the case for wait and see. But second half of the year, rates come down, oil comes down. That definitely opens the door for potential cuts.
Yeah.
But we go on, Fed stops talking today. This is the blackout. We'll get a few Fed speakers today, and then they're in quiet period ahead of their next meeting. But nobody anticipates anything before the end of the year. So first, Kevin Warsh has to get confirmed. That's kind of an if, when, and then if oil prices come down, that should moderate the CPI numbers.
Yeah. Well, as for oil, the price of it is coming down and coming down sharply right now. Take a look at that. The WTI down as much as over 11%, along with Brent crude. This is a result of Iran's foreign minister this morning in a post on social media saying the Strait of Hormuz will completely open to commercial traffic, at least for the extent that the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon remains in effect. President Trump coming out and echoing that point as well in his own posts on social media. Let's get to Pippa Stevens for more on this dramatic move this morning.
Hey, David, so I think it's really important here that we focus on the full post from Iran's foreign minister because he said that while the strait is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire, he also mentioned a coordinated route as announced by the regime, which doesn't sound like it is fully open. And CIBC's private wealth director Bannon noted that this market has been trading the headlines, the speed of the headlines, and not the certainty of flows, and that this move feels optimistic, especially as the market reprices the idea of reopening faster than it actually can reopen and the flows will resume. And President Trump also said on Truth Social just now that the blockade will continue, which again does not suggest a normalization of flows. Now, both WTI and Brent are below $90 and less than $20 above where they were prior to the war breaking out. We're also seeing big drops in product prices with gasoline and diesel futures tanking. European diesel is now at its lowest level in more than a month. And I did speak to Maersk this morning, and it was before the post from the Iranian foreign minister, so timing is important. But still, they said that there is no change in their approach and that they are not transiting the strait. So again, guys, clearly a big response in the market here, but we have not seen a resumption of flows, and it doesn't feel like flows will normalize anytime soon at this point.
So what are you reading and hearing, Pippa? Because I mean, the ceasefire was agreed to, right, by Israel, Lebanon, and President Trump, imposed by President Trump, but Hezbollah wasn't involved in this. So I do wonder just how fragile this is potentially.
I think fragile is the key word there, Sarah. And also, if you are a ship owner, you probably don't want to be the first one to send your crew through and to test the water, so to speak. And so there is probably not going to be a big surge to send your ship through, especially since it is a temporary ceasefire and there's still so many questions open right now in terms of what's going to happen. Should the ceasefire expire or should it be extended? And so again, if you're a ship owner, you're not really going to want to risk your crew. And we still have seen flows more than 90% below their pre-war levels. And the other thing is that even if the war were to end today, in order to get all the tankers back in position, that will take a while. If you look at the number of VLCCs heading to the U.S. right now, it's at 70. That's up from an average of about 27 last year, according to data from Kepler. And so once again, to have all those tankers U-turn and go back to the strait will take some time. And so even once traffic has resumed, it will take a while for things to be normalized. And then the final point I'll make here is that if you are a producer and you've closed in some of your operations, given how expensive and how much time it takes to restart things like a refinery, you are not going to do that unless you have certainty that you can operate at full capacity. And so while the market is clearly taking this as indication that we could see a resumption of flows, there's going to be a while before things really normalize.
Not to mention as well, the blockade continues, the president making that clear. So Iranian oil will not be reaching the market. Is that fair to say? Which obviously is different than it had been, because that had been the one thing that had been going through.
Exactly, and that's about 1.5 to 1.7 million barrels per day of exports. And there are some conflicting reports about the extent to which vessels are currently loading at Iranian ports. But of course, a lot of questions here about the extent to which Iran needs that revenue from their oil exports, and so how long they can sustain that oil not reaching the market. But guys, also, look at elsewhere, look at other choke points, whether you talk about Bab el-Mandab Strait or Malacca Strait over in Singapore, where China is building up their presence in the Scarborough Shoal. There are a lot of choke points here on global markets, and now people are saying that those are going to be repriced going forward, and that when flows do resume through Hormuz, there's going to be a new sense that these choke points around the world for key commodities and for shipping will be repriced, and there'll be more of a little bit of a risk premium priced in, given that we've seen Iran can effectively close down the Strait of Hormuz.
All right. Pippa, thank you. Pippa Stevens. Let's take a look at the broader markets here, of course, with the S&P up over 1%, NASDAQ up over 1.2%. And joining us now from, Council on Foreign Relations Senior Fellow and former Bridgewater Associates Chief Investment Strategist, Rebecca Patterson. Good to have you here, Rebecca.
Great to be here.
All right. I mean, first, just give me your take on the news flow this morning, not to mention, of course, the significant rebound we've seen in the broader markets over the course of the last week or two.
Yeah, I mean, the last week or so was tech dominant, right? So it was, if global growth is uncertain, we know there's over, just 4 companies, $650 billion of AI CapEx coming into the economy this year. So it makes sense after those stocks sold off that they would come back because it's structural, it's not cyclical. Everything else, though, we have this cyclical question around the supply shocks and what it means for inflation and growth. And that was front and center this week in Washington, D.C. But this news could not come at a better time in terms of the strait potentially being open. And I say that with a lot of caution, because the buffers that have been helping the market in terms of physical supply are quickly being run down. So all those inventories that were released to give some cushion to economies that are net importers, that is getting exhausted. So we really need the supplies to start coming back online quickly if we don't want to see the supply.
We're going to go back to Al Jazeera here to see what's going on.
Meant to produce medicines and cures for cancer and things alike.
Ali Hashim, thank you so much. Live for us in Tehran with the latest. Well, as we've been reporting, Iran says while the Strait of Hormuz is now open, ships must use the coordinated route already announced by the country's ports and maritime organization. Just last week, the Revolutionary Guard said this was the route vessels needed to take in coordination with its navy. This is a more northerly route closer to Iran's coast. Those shipping routes pass either side of Harangue Island. That heavily guarded island is reportedly being used by the IRGC to monitor ship traffic. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Anna Salisbury, who is a senior fellow in the National Security Program at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. She joins us from London. Thank you so much for being with us. First of all, what do you make of everything? Obviously, it's a little bit convoluted at this point in time because just because Iran says the Strait of Hormuz open doesn't necessarily make it so. From your perspective, how soon could we actually see ships passing through?
Well, the key thing here that we need to figure out is insurance. It was insurance that stopped commercial shipping from passing the Strait of Hormuz initially, because if a passage is too risky, the underwriters who provide shipping insurance will either not provide it or make it so expensive as to make a voyage untenable. So really the question is, do the underwriters who provide that insurance assess the risk to be low enough that ships can pass through the strait? That will be the core test of this. But what we need to remember also is that Iran could change its mind very, very quickly.
Indeed, and the US has said it's going to continue its naval blockade of Iranian ports. Can you just run us through exactly what has to happen from the insurance company's point of view, or the shipping company's point of view, before we see that first ship go through?
So first you have to have a guarantee that the ship is going to make it through the strait. So that would mean that there is no way that the Iranians can prevent them by charging a toll or something similar to that. Secondly, you would have to be feeling assured that the ship is not going to hit a naval mine in the strait. And thirdly, that the Iranians will not hit it with a drone or a missile or something like that. So those are the key risks at the moment to shipping. Given that there is a ceasefire and that Iran has made these assurances, it may well be that the underwriters will take that as enough, but we will see.
Yeah, we've just got some information that the German shipping company Hapag-Lloyd will refrain from passing through the Strait of Hormuz while it assesses the recent announcement that the waterway will be open, saying that we are now beginning to assess the new situation as well as the risks involved. How long potentially could all of this take?
The problem is that the situation is moving extraordinarily quickly at the moment. Given that we've had this news very out of the blue, obviously those shipping companies are going to need to take some time to assess. But also this is all based on a ceasefire and on negotiations. And a lot of this will depend on how those negotiations go over the next couple of days and whether an actual deal can be reached. Because a lot of these shipping companies probably won't be feeling safe until there is a deal rather than a ceasefire.
Yes, and with so much changing almost by the minute at this point in time, it feels like some way off before there's some certainty about exactly what is going to happen. We've obviously heard for weeks now, since the beginning of this war, that regardless of when it is open, the Strait of Hormuz, it is going to take a long, long time for things to ramp up. Can you just talk us through that process for when shipping companies will be able to move through that strait like they were before the war began?
So it will depend on where their ships are. There are quite a few ships that are currently stuck in the strait. So they will need to be moved out and their crews refreshed because those crews have been stuck on there for a very long time. A lot of the trade routes that these companies operate have been disrupted. So their voyages are premised on it taking a certain amount of time to get to whichever port they're going to in Bahrain or Kuwait or wherever, and then come back out. Those have all been disrupted. So it will take some time for the kinks to work themselves out in terms of the routes. But once everything is safe and the companies feel confident in doing that, I wouldn't have thought it would take too long to get that back up and running.
Yeah, what are some of the economic repercussions for these huge, big shipping companies, and just how much lost revenue has there been so far?
So you have to think of several things when working this out. So there is the cost of lost cargoes, there is the cost of lost voyages, so the profit that would have been made on the cargo that you are taking on your voyage, and then there are lost contracts. So it may well be that companies that have committed under a contract to deliver a certain cargo have now broken that contract essentially. So that could also have some economic cost. And there's also the sort of general confidence in the industry. So if companies are still nervous about going through the straits, that economic cost could...
Okay, we're going to go to Bloomberg again.
For quite some time. And a lot of it is going to be to do with the cargoes themselves and whether those cargoes can be put back to where they should be.
Yes, continue, Larry.
Right. So if we can just rewind a little bit, they've said that it's open on what's called the coordinated route. That's the route that passes quite by the Iranian coast. So we're going to have to see the small print of this and see what open actually means, and see whether the ship owners are willing to go through and in what number. It's not going to be a rush for the exits and everything's over. That's not where we're at. It's obviously an encouraging sign, and when you put it in the context of ceasefires and all of those things, there is unquestionably a sense that we're moving in the direction of a kind of a more peacetime environment. But this is not the done deal. This is not the kind of answer to Hormuz fully reopening now. So yes, we can have a lot of ships coming through, and yes, we can get back to a normalized situation, but we're not there now.
It's markets that are enthusiastic to get something that looks normal. Eric, of course, we're still higher than we were pre-conflict, but still we're down to levels that we were about 2 months ago, about March 10th, or rather 1 month ago. March 10th is where we're trading at right now for oil. What do you make of this market's willingness, the paper market, not the physical market, but to drastically reduce prices on, as you say, a message from the Iranian foreign minister that we still don't know the fine print of?
I think it's an interesting move, and again, I think there is just this sense that this is a direction we're going in, and this is a kind of a confirmatory message. But this word, coordinated route, if you look at what Iran has previously said publicly, they talked about this coordinated route, and they've said you have to speak to Iranian authorities if you want to sail through. So a lot of owners don't really fancy kind of getting into regular dialogue with the Iran Revolutionary Guard or the Iranian kind of military in order to go through. So for those guys, they may still be more cautious. And what is certain is that they'll all be watching what each other does, who's going to be the first one to go, how does that get treated, what insurance is available. This has just come out of the blue. The insurance industry can't just kind of price this risk overnight. They've got to work out what happens for the first vessels that they do allow to go through. So there's a lot that needs to happen before we get to a kind of a normalized shipping route. And again, this is a ceasefire. This isn't kind of permanent peace. This is a ceasefire.
Right, and who knows how long that's going to last, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asserting that the job is not done with Hezbollah. Alaric, it's a point very well taken on this route, and the fact that you need IRGC coordination for it. If this is how it unfolds, if you do have vessels going through this specific corridor through coordination with the IRGC, does that not just cement that the Strait of Hormuz is indeed controlled by Iran? Is this something that American allies will be okay with?
Again, that's an if. We don't know that all of the owners are perfectly happy to coordinate with Iran on transits. The US has said it doesn't want that to happen. We need to see how that plays out in practice. It is an if it does happen, if there is widespread use of the Iranian route, and people accept that Iran has to have a heavy involvement in transits, then yes, but that's not a proven case yet. That may happen, it may not.
At the same time, we are getting headlines coming from European world leaders, from Friedrich Merz to Keir Starmer to Macron, talking about the need to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump also posting on Truth Social saying that NATO has called asking if we need help on the Strait of Hormuz, that he received a call and saying that they should stay away unless they want ships with oil. Again, emphasizing, saying I told them to stay away. Alaric, what do we know about efforts from other nations, from NATO, from the Europeans, to try to do something that would allow them to travel through the Strait of Hormuz?
I think if you look back at when they were making a lot of noises about going through or helping to secure Hormuz, what they actually said was they'd be willing to do it in a more peaceful environment, and we aren't at that peaceful environment yet. To get the main Hormuz shipping route going, it may need to be demined. And those are kind of jobs that could get done in a peacetime environment or a more peaceful environment, let's say. And that's what really I think the offer from the Western governments or the non-American governments is, to help when they feel that the situation is more secure. They don't want to kind of be patrolling in an area that Iran is kind of routinely attacking. They want to do it when they feel like there is a more negotiated and confident sort of peace environment.
Alaric, it seems that maybe the president is listening to you, because literally right as you said that, this coming from the president on Truth Social, Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all sea mines. So how big of a difference would that make? Just to emphasize the point you just made, Alaric, if that is indeed the truth, how far does that go to reopening the Strait of Hormuz and giving ships the comfort to traverse it?
There's been so much said about mines, whether they are, whether they aren't, when they're being put in, or exactly where they are, all of those kinds of things. What we know is that the kind of old route, the traditional and normal route, has been avoided. If they demine it, and if there is full confidence, there is still the question of what Iran is supportive of. Will they allow people to use the old route without coordination with Iran? A lot of owners, or several owners, have said to us they don't want to coordinate with Iran. They want freedom of navigation to be freedom of navigation, and just to be able to go through as they normally would. And all of these things need to be worked out in time. It's very possible that if we keep going towards peace, these things can happen, but we're not there yet.
Alaric, thank you so much for joining us. That's Bloomberg's Alaric Nightingale. And for more on the latest on the Iran war, you can head to our blog, type TLiveGo on your terminal. Still ahead, we're also tracking airline stocks moving, one of the biggest sector gainers of the SP 500.
All right, I'm going to switch over to a clip by Associated Press about Steve Bannon at Semaphore World Economy 2026 Summit. But before we do that and listen to Steve Bannon, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium. This will help boost up your immune system, help with your skin, and help with your brain function. Super important. Also, ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and blood glucose levels, brings down inflammation and boosts up your immune system, and helps with your cardiovascular system. Now, by improving your cardiovascular system, you're also improving the blood flow to your brain, so you're helping with brain function. In addition, by bringing down inflammation, you're helping with brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, stack the vitamin C and magnesium and the ashwagandha root, help with your brain, help with your skin, help with your immune system, help with your cardiovascular health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Semaphore.
Look at that. Your fans are here. Or one of them. Thank you, sir.
I want to thank my agent.
So I was just thinking, we were here a year ago talking about the administration, talking about MAGA, and I think then it felt like your wing of the Republican Party was ascendant. A year later, Trump's at war in the Middle East. He's doing a deal with China. You're fighting him over deportations. So what happened?
I'm not fighting him. Look, first of all, we were ascendant on those policies, and we'll be ascendant again. President Trump just announced, I think, a peace deal in the Middle East, peace deal with Lebanon. We'll see how it works out. I think the blockade's very strong. But people shouldn't lose the fact that the populist nationalist movement in this country has got a lot of muscle, right? Right now, we've had a huge victory in Texas. We're fighting to a draw in Virginia. You look in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's below 50%. So we got a lot of stroke, and I think people are getting very motivated. Some of the policies are maybe not totally aligned, but President Trump's our leader, and I realize there's been a lot of noise out there about President Trump and the war and maybe some of our alliances, but I think this movement at its core, particularly on the core issues, is stronger than ever.
But can you give me your sense and of basically how the administration has gone so far? Kind of periodize it for me a little. Like there was a period where it just felt like this was Steve Bannon, flood the zone, being quoted constantly, and really the policies were coming from the populist wing, and it felt, I don't know, I guess I put it at in the first Iran bombing when it felt like that stopped and we went in a different direction. But how do you see it?
Well, because remember, the 4 years we had in the wilderness, we had a political operation, which was the precinct strategy to really become very proficient in getting out low information, low propensity voters, which led to the 22 and the 24 victory. In addition, we had public intellectuals that stepped up and did, like Russ Vought, who's Secretary of OMB right now, that did Center for Renewing America, Project 2025. So those first 6 months when I was here last year, we were the beneficiary of 4 years of being in the wilderness, but with policies, cadres, we had networks of people that came in the administration, they were filling up. Sergio Gore was personnel. So we had the non-Senate confirmed. So when we were here last year and then all the way through the June bombing, we were on a roll. But as Washington does, right, the lobbyists and the corporations and the donors, and I think, I'm not saying we're off track. I think some of these are not as hard and tough as we want to be. And I keep telling people, President Trump and this movement he created is a moderate. After President Trump, and really a lot of the muscle in our movement is much farther right than President Trump and much harder, much more nationalistic than even President Trump is. So I think you're going to see a resurgence of that. I'm actually very optimistic about November. I think November we're going to hold the House. I think if we can get the Senate to do anything, we can actually hold the Senate. They look grim right now, but I see grassroots people out there that are thirsting to get back into the fight and thirsting to fight for these policies. I think a few changes of these policies, we're going to get people back out there, and I feel better than ever in our movement. And I know it works because the first up until the bombing in Iran, and even remember that bombing was not as bad as it could have been because the greatest ally in the world wanted regime change, and President Trump did total obliteration of the nuclear program, which still rolls through the day. It's one of the reasons that they're talking about this deal that he might go to Islamabad and do because of the beginnings of that bombing. So
was that sarcasm? Do you not think they're the greatest ally in the world?
No, I do not think they're the greatest ally in the world. In fact, I think the only worst allies you could have are the Arab allies we've got in the Gulf. I think I think Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, I don't think any of them are any good, right? They're double dealing us all the time. Right now, I think the strategy is perfect with the blockade. As soon as we get this sorted out with the Chinese Communist Party, I keep saying it, the Middle East is a sideshow and Israel's a sideshow to a sideshow. We've got to pull back. We have to pull back the hemispheric defense. The Central Pacific as the strategic pivot, like Mackinder said, Eurasian landmass, the heartland is the pivot for Eurasia. The pivot for the United States is that vast Pacific, as the giants in the 19th century knew. So I think we pull back here, and this is how we control the world, is through hemispheric defense and controlling the Pacific. We're a Pacific nation, but no, I think we got to get out of the Middle East. I think our Arab allies are terrible, and I think Israel shows you that they go their own way every time.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about the kind of business and the lobbyists, and maybe a couple lobbyists in this room. You raise your hands or not, but certainly a business heavy crowd. And that has been, I've spent a lot of time with you over the last year, and kind of my observation has just been that it just feels like in Washington, the money always wins when there's a conflict right now. And I think that's sort of what you observed too. Why is that? Why do you think that the kind of movement right is getting rolled by the kind of corporate
It doesn't
right.
always get rolled. What I said last time also, I said, hey, you're going to have two choices. You're going to have Mangione or you're going to have what turned out to be Mandami, right? You're going to have, and Mandami's populism on the left actually thinks it's more of neo-Marxism and jihadism. But but it's very effective. What they've done is copied us on how to get out the vote. The Working Family Party and DSA down in Texas, where they won some big state elections. These people are just like us. They get out and get low propensity voters. You should not discount them. They're very, very tough. But when we say the money wins, what I tell the money, you're only digging yourselves into a deeper hole. Because right now we're heading to, I think, crisis after crisis. And you see this in this country with the information state, particularly what's happening with AI. If you look at young people, young men of, Hispanic, Black, white right now, they're getting more and more, some to the left, but a lot to the right. These people are much more nationalistic, and we're going to get to what I say, if you don't address this now with policies that can work for working class people, you're going to go for, because our movement right now is more populist than nationalist. It's going to get to be more nationalist. And after that, you're going to become ultra-nationalist. And when I say ultra-nationalist, that means foreign capital out, foreigners out. It's going to be tough. So we've got to solve these problems today.
And I think when you said this a year ago, like you've got a choice between Steve Bannon and Luigi Mangione, I think people were kind of like pretty freaked out. They
didn't know which one to choose, right?
I think people in Washington right now are much less worried that that's going to be the choice, and I wonder. And you say you think Republicans are gonna take the House. That's it's a very, if you bet on that on Cal Shear politics,
you said it. Look at John Cornyn. John Cornyn spent $80 million to $100 million, the same old playbook to destroy Ken Paxton. We went down to Texas with Bert Fillers and Glenn Beck in January. We had a proposition on the ballot. We put a proposition on to galvanize people. That was to prohibit Sharia law in the state of Texas. Also to have, that's funny. Is that funny? Okay, fine. You're going to see how funny it is. We're prohibiting Sharia law in Texas, and we're going to shut down a lot of this nonsense that's going on. The next thing we're going to shut down is H-1B visas. People in the United States, citizens of this country, are not prepared to have this. You may think it's funny. Folks in Texas don't think it's funny. Folks in South Carolina don't think it's funny. And this is that seething anger right below the surface. Because the global elites, you sit there and mock these people like they don't count, like African Americans don't count, working class Hispanics don't count, working class whites don't count. That is the backbone of this country. And trust me, that is a latent political power that is being turned into a political power. So no, we're going to ban Sharia law in this country. We've already designated in Texas the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as terrorist organizations, as many in the Gulf Emirates. So this is very serious. We got 2 million votes on that proposition and galvanized the Paxton team to actually now lead, I think, Cornyn by 8% with no money. Cornyn spent $80 to $100 million. Lindsey Graham, right now, the globalist, is under 50% in South Carolina. So the populist movement, when you look at really victories we can have, is more powerful than ever, and it's only going to get more powerful over time. So laugh all you want, but he who laughs last laughs best. And the people in this country are not going to tolerate what you stand for. You stand for the destruction of this country, the sovereignty of this nation, and you look for the destruction of American citizens. The system that is going to come in place is not simply America first. It's American citizens first. American citizens have to have a better deal than any foreigners here. They have to have a better deal than any illegal alien. And that day is coming.
I think a lot of your fights have been inside the right, the ones that you're talking about, I mean, the Texas primary, but you also have some sort of, I think, are building some unusual coalitions, and I'm specifically thinking about AI.
I'm David Lichtenstein. I founded Lightstone in 1986.
What are you kind of hearing and feeling from the base about artificial intelligence and about the big AI companies?
The American people have turned off about it. Look what happened in New Mexico. Well, first off, you talk about populism. Look at what's happened in the trial yesterday with Live Nation. First time in 45 years at a jury trial The little guy stood up and said, "You're an illegal monopoly, you have to be broken up." Look what happened in New Mexico with Meta. It was a 4 or 5 week trial that took an hour to determine, and in Los Angeles, where the little guy gets a voice and a vote. He votes against everything you guys stand for, and particularly these out of control AI companies. Right now, we stopped the amnesty bill preemption in the big beautiful bill. We stopped it again in the NDAA, the must pass. The White House came out with their framework. I think that's already shattered. David Sachs essentially relieved for cause for not delivering. And this is a coalition of the left and the right. And quite frankly, the right is now just starting to stand, not the leaders of the right, but people in these states. Ron DeSantis, very smart person, yesterday said, "I'm calling a special session to bring people back to essentially decelerate artificial intelligence." They can't use the excuse we've had a Sputnik moment and it's the Chinese Communist Party. That's the fear. We cut the chips off. I don't care what NVIDIA wants to do.
Just cut back. Why are people upset about AI?
Because first off, the damage it's doing to kids, what it's doing to the country, what it's doing to jobs, but most importantly, it's like mythos. When we had nuclear power, right? You remember from the Oppenheimer movie, you had the Atomic Energy Commission. You had some sort of at least modicum of a regulatory apparatus. These oligarchs want absolutely no control. They are radical accelerationists. And we know now from mythos that they're the first guys to say, "Hey, look, this thing is out of control. We can't."
Earlier in this broadcast, I mentioned that there needs to be regulation with AI. AI is getting to a point where you release the demon out of the box, and now people's bank accounts are at risk, companies' databases are at risk, your medical information is at risk, all this stuff because they're creating things that they shouldn't be creating. And the only reason why is because they want to make ungodly amounts of money and have their stock market go up, or when they issue an IPO, it's going to be to the moon and all this stuff. So there's this gigantic wealth transfer. And because of this gigantic wealth transfer to these oligarchs that Stephen Bannon is talking about, there's going to be animosity. And this animosity is going to ferment. And all of a sudden, it's going to get to a point where if the middle class is not getting a stake in a growing economy, then we may actually see the middle class go after the aristocracy. Very similar to something like maybe the French Revolution. But we can't be making things like AI systems that could disrupt people's livelihoods, people's banking systems and the financial industry and the medical industry, and cause all this havoc and truncate jobs and not think that there's going to be some sort of backlash. We need to regulate this now. Now, AI needs to be regulated. These companies should not be able to issue out code that could cause havoc to the system, our social system. And if they do, they should be held accountable and be charged for cyber crimes and all this stuff, right? They're opening up the door for cyber crimes. They're opening up the door for people to lose their livelihood. There needs to be means to regulate them, to prevent it. And if they release a code that causes systemic risk within the society, they should be able to be sued.
We have to have controls of artificial intelligence. Yep. We cannot just be accelerationists. And that means some modicum of regulatory control. Right now in this city, they are plotting with Speaker Johnson to, I think, since they've lost 3 times, to take a preemption bill that preempts all state regulations and to put it in a must-pass. I think we're going to try to do it in reconciliation and try to do the Save America Act. So to say to the right, oh, you guys want to make sure that there's no more way to cheat. You're going to have to take AI. That's not going to work. AI behind the scenes with the populist right is, I think, actually right next to immigration, our top issue. And people are galvanized by this. And you see DeSantis, as smart as he is, really calling back for a special session to deal with it.
Yeah.
Do you think in
And the thing is that once you have the recession, we'll eventually have a recession. We don't know when. I'm actually going to be reading a book by Dr. Goodspeed, who I have met. And he just released a book about why recessions happen, all right? And what's interesting about his research is that they can't be predicted, that it actually is a random event, okay? Which is an interesting perspective, right? Now, some economists would think otherwise. Now, he is a historian dealing with economies. So he's more like Neil Ferguson, but I'll give you my take on his book when I read it, but I did see a lecture that he spoke about recessions and the economy and all this. But once the recession hits, whenever it does, the unemployment is going to be structural, not cyclical, meaning that people aren't going to be called back to work so looking for work will take longer, and to be re-employed is going to take longer. When that happens, what Stephen Bannon is predicting is going to take place. It's going to be on fire. What he's talking about will be on fire, and there'll be so much backlash on tech bros and Wall Street investing in this crap. And the aggregate demand is going to shrink, that there's going to be heavy regulation on AI. I think AI should be regulated. Now, should it be regulated at the federal level? Yes. Because you don't want, a patchwork of regulatory frameworks across the nation based on different states. It's better to just have it at a federal level. But the problem is that you have all the tech bros, the ones that have the big money, going in, buying out Congress so they get a sweet deal. But when the recession happens and it's structural unemployment, there's going to be such a backlash that these companies are going to be heavily regulated. Because if it doesn't, there will be an uprising.
Anthropic's conflict with the Department of War, do you think Anthropic had it right?
I think Anthropic had it right. I think Anthropic, it's very, very complicated. I really respect Pete Hegseth. We were the leaders in getting Pete confirmed our show. I have tremendous respect for them over there. But I think in this situation, right, it's almost too dangerous. And I think we have to then have it coming together about it. That's why you need a sort of atomic energy commission. You need some sort of modicum of regulatory, not just about the kids, the chat GPTs and the suicides. That's bad enough. It's terrible. Not just about our copyright holders pay for it. But the central thing is what is happening in the weapons lab with AI. We have no earthly idea. Mythos Review just gets dropped on you. You have no earthly idea.
The AI, the problem here is that there's an existential threat in terms of finding vulnerabilities of our key infrastructure, banking, energy sector. Hackers can use this stuff. Okay, so there's that problem. Then you also have the problem of AI being used in terms of weapon systems and weapon development, especially in biologics and in chemical warfare. Very low barriers of entry now. So it's becoming an existential threat. So it has to be regulated. It has to be. And I think Bannon isn't speaking in hyperbole. AI development can be as existential threat as nuclear energy.
what's going on. We can't do that. And we cannot particularly turn it over to Elon Musk and Meta. And you saw it a jury. When a jury had a shot at Zuckerberg, you saw what they did. That's only going to get worse. We have to come together and figure this out. And you can't jam people by putting it into a must-pass law.
Almost out of time, but a final question is, J.D. Vance heir to the MAGA movement? Is he the heir apparent?
I don't think MAGA has President Trump. As you know, I'm a huge advocate of President Trump's third term. So right now, I think...
You're not just saying that to mess with J.D.?
No, not at all. I think you guys all paid your taxes here yesterday. Are there anyone in the room who would not vote for President Trump and what he's trying to do with this economy? President Trump is...
I can't imagine, but we're out of time, so let's pick that up. Thank you, Steve.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important. You need good pancreatic health. You don't want to be a Steve Jobs, all right? Digestive enzyme complex will help to digest proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. And when you are reducing that load on your pancreas and you have the enzymes to break up your food, you're going to have better digestion and you'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. Super important. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. In addition, olive leaf extract brings down inflammation, and what it does is it'll also help to control your lipid profile. This will help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And I also have droplets and lozenges. You can get the lozenges in Orange Splash, Structural Nail Silver, and in Manuka Honey. Very high quality lozenges. I also have in stock the cherry flavor and the lemon, the honey and lemon drops. We're in the allergy season now. You need to take these. These will help to mitigate that sore throat, that allergy. It'll help to neutralize, and it'll help to improve your oral cavity. Super important. Have a few bags for your house or for work. You never know when you need it. Take them right away if you have that throat irritation. And these are perfect for the allergy season, cleaning in your home where there's a lot of dust, or the cold season. So please go to my store and get the lozenges and the drops. If you spend $100 or more, you will get a free gift. So make sure you use discount 5. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Cash Jordan because we need to know what's going on in New York.
New York's mayor just launched his wealth tax.
I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. Wow. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so
let's punish them and get them to park their wealth somewhere else.
They're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working
But
people.
they paid for it.
It's coming through.
How does it hurt
this
someone
tax will raise
else?
at least $500 million directly for the city.
Okay.
We'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, safer neighborhoods.
Free daycares by taxing the rich because we're already bankrupt and everyone knows it.
Governor Kathy Hochul shifted positions today, throwing her support behind a new proposal to tax the ultra-wealthy.
This will target people who own multiple homes in the state and who leave those high-end properties empty most of the time. It's called a pied-à-terre tax. News 4's Andrew Sick explains.
So what if they leave them empty? They were allowed to buy them and they don't punish them.
That sold a few years back for more than $200 million.
That's a sick place, man.
According to elected officials,
Guy's filthy
is
rich.
hardly ever here.
I believe it.
Skyline, but those people are not part of our city.
So today, Governor Kathy Hochul proposed a new way to get money from homeowners who don't live here.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
who don't live
Now
here.
think about this whole base 44 and 5 coding and all that. Maybe we should like step back and like go, why do you need more apps? Why do you need to make these things? Stop overcomplicating your business. We need to go back to simplistic, more minimalism type lifestyle. We don't have to be over-teched. We don't need thousands of different apps to try to automate processes at work and all this stuff. Do you really need that? People need to do their job and stop being so fucking lazy. But the thing is do you need to over-tech your life? Absolutely not. An Apple Watch is actually terrible for you, especially if you have the hepatic feature connected. You'll be always in sympathetic mode and have high cortisol levels, which will erode your tissues and hurt your organ systems and age you faster. Yes, the Apple Watch with constant notification and hepatic sensing will lead to making you age faster. Do we really need that bullshit? No, we don't. But you're marketed to believe you need it. Do we really need all this AI? No, we don't. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of people that build up apps for their company, try to build up an app for maybe building up a business, a new business model or whatever, and then all of a sudden it'll plateau out and people will go to the next new thing. It wasn't that long ago everyone was told, be a coder, you'll be fine. And then it wasn't that long ago that people said, be a data analyst and you'll be fine. And then now they're saying, be a prompter and work with AI to build these scripts and apps. In 2 years, 3 years, people will move on to another thing. But the problem is that big companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Palantir, they're creating things that can cause systemic risk, that can affect the banking industry, that can affect the medical industry, it can affect our energy sector. And these systems can be used for nefarious purposes like making weapons. So, is our life really better with AI? Not so much, especially when there's structural unemployment that's coming around the corner after the next recession.
Propose a common sense surcharge on high-value second homes in New York City.
She called it a surcharge, but Mayor Mamdani called it a tax.
He's right. This is a tax on properties worth more than $5 million that are owned by people who do not reside in New York City.
Both leaders supporting the new
Okay, this is my problem with this whole thing. The argument is that this hurts housing costs for average New Yorkers. Look on the screen here. How many average New Yorkers are gonna fit inside that place? Are they gonna, turn it into a bunch of studio and one-bedroom apartments that cost $1,000 a month? That was never gonna happen here. And you have an entire industry that exists in New York for both luxury homes and affordable private homes. And New York punishes people that are involved in each market. The landlords that have the affordable homes, they're punished because they can't build enough of them. And here we have a luxury home and there's only one allowed to be built because of where it's situated. And now this person's gonna get punished too. All we're doing here is punishing success, yet we don't think it's gonna run away.
And so for all of the discussion of the imagined exodus that would take place were we to tax the wealthiest workers by the appropriate amount. I say imagined because before I was a mayor, I was a state legislator and I was part of an effort to increase taxes on millionaires at that time. We were told the same thing then. And what we find now is that we have more millionaires today than we did at that time, even after having passed that time.
So according to the new socialist mayor, the more you tax the millionaires, the more of them magically appear somehow.
13,000 mainly high-rise condos, each worth more than $5 million, and owned by people who live outside the city full-time. Often these are investment properties or rarely used second homes. No one's primary residence. The
This is
governor
how
has
it
resisted
starts.
until now Mayor Zohran Mamdani's call to increase taxes on the income of millionaires and corporations, citing concerns that the wealthy tax base would flee New York. So we asked if this now opens the door to other taxes in the state's overdue budget.
Of course it does. 100% it does. This is how they all start. We're going to tax the richest of the rich only for right now, and then it might change in the future.
Will there be any additional taxes when we finally do see a state budget sooner than later?
As I've said, I'm clearly not entertaining income taxes or corporate taxes.
Governor, I hear you leaving the door open for anything else that's not a corporate tax and not an income
I'm
tax.
simply saying, I'm not negotiating the budget in front of anybody on this one.
Speaking.
I'm telling you.
Oh, these pesky news outlets.
Those who benefit from the city without.
I'm telling you, New York is being taken over by a bunch of stupid liberals, and it's going to destroy the city. The way to save New York is to cut services. The way to save New York is to stop feeding this idea that New York should be a place for illegal aliens. We need to stop this idea that, you know what? Maybe New York needs to have a balanced budget and stop bleeding everybody dry. And it's not just the rich, it's also the middle class that's getting hurt. New York needs to stop having so many social programs. But with Mamdani in office, the social programs are increasing because he's a communist. He literally is a Marxist. He's Napoleon the Pig from Animal Farm. And what was the lesson learned from Animal Farm? It doesn't turn out well when they kick out the capitalists. So, New York is dying. New York is dying.
In a full-time capacity should contribute to the costs that it takes to run the city.
Governor
They do.
GETTR.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with.
Governor
They do.
GETTR tax will target the city's.
The idea that they don't pay anything to run the city, they pay nothing. It's not just billionaires, by the way. Everyday people here are paying so much to run the city, and it doesn't run.
On a tax day panel in front of a banner that said "Tax the Rich," Mayor Mamdani cheered the GETTR tax and talked about his continued push for taxes on the wealthy.
Yeah.
What we are talking about is a recognition of the inequality that has permeated politics through the 5 boroughs of our city, through our country, through the world.
Through our country built on inequality. Get out of here.
Only expected to raise $500 million against at least a $5 billion city budget.
Right, so it doesn't do anything.
Governor Kathy Hochul says she'll continue to do what she can to help the city, but at the end of the day,
It is the responsibility of the mayor and the city council to find more savings.
But they're not doing
as for
that.
how this is playing politically, the presumptive Republican nominee gunning for Governor Hochul's job this November, that'd be Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman. He's saying the governor is now breaking her promise of no new taxes this election year.
Technically, yeah.
And he says this will open the door for other taxes, perhaps an inheritance tax in the state
Right,
budget.
100%.
That is when and if we ever do see a state budget.
Right, because you know what? These new taxes, they're already not enough for all the free stuff. And what that means is we're just going to need more of them.
And so for all of that conversation about this imagined exodus, we have to reckon with the very real exodus that we are seeing in the city. An exodus of working class people.
Right.
An exodus of those who cannot afford to live here.
They're getting hit too.
And for many who work here, who now find their residence in Jersey City or in Connecticut or in Pennsylvania, anywhere else where their dollar can go a little bit further.
Why is that?
We've seen just in a snapshot from 2000 to 2020, the city lost 200,000 of its black residents. That is the cost of inaction.
Right, but the problem is,
going back to what I was saying, the city isn't really for the poor. The city isn't really for the lower middle class. The city is really for the ultra wealthy or the upper middle class. And so you have these transients that are coming in. They're just out of college, and they, if they can get a decent, entry-level job, maybe work, get experience, work up the ladder, that's great. But most of them, they can't. They don't like the cramped space. They don't like the high cost of living. The stress is extremely higher, and they're transient. They stay here for maybe 2 years, 3 years, and they leave. The city doesn't want them. The city aborts them out. So, the reality of the situation is New York's not for everybody. It's not a kind city. It's a city that is very stressful, and it's not for the faint of heart. Now, the city is becoming more and more expensive, and people are going to need to move out if they can't afford it. It's that simple. It's the same thing that's happening in Paris. Same thing that's happening in London. A lot of people can't live in London because it's too expensive. And here's the magic advice. Your life is actually better in suburbia, not in New York City, especially with the decline that's taking place since de Blasio. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will help to improve your oral hygiene. It'll help to neutralize, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with your gum line, reduce inflammation at the gum line. And with good oral hygiene, you will be able to improve your cardiovascular health. Poor oral hygiene leads to poor vascular health and also valvular health. All right? So it's really important to use a very high quality toothpaste. And this toothpaste has the structural nanosilver, has no fluoride. So you're going to be able to neutralize and improve your oral cavity. Super important. And another great product that I have is the structural nanosilver gel in the tube form or in the quick dispenser. They're dual purpose. All right? Either one, use it the same way. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, and it'll help to heal it about a third of the time quicker. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well because of the cold season, put it on your hands. It stays active for 5.5 hours. You can also put it around your eyes, around your nose, around your mouth, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. You can't do that with Perel. This is dual purpose. Like I said, make sure you have some at home and at work. You never know when you need it, but it's very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nanosilver gel and the structural nanosilver toothpaste. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
As we've seen, the proposals to fix this situation are just new taxes on the very people the mayor says are leaving because it's unaffordable here. And why is it that a dollar goes further in another state? Why aren't we answering that question? Well, New York City has its own tax. So if you live in New York City, you pay federal income tax, you pay state tax, and then you pay city tax. So there's a whole tax that doesn't even exist here. Plus the state tax is already higher here than it is in New Jersey. So leaving means your dollar goes a lot further and the rents aren't $5,000 a pop.
Both leaders supporting the new pied-à-terre tax. That's the French term for foot on the ground that typically means a place you own but don't live.
Yeah. It's not a new concept.
13,000 homes in New York City.
This is how it starts.
Valued at $5 million and above. Apartments that are not owner-occupied.
That'll all change.
The local's Republican opponent in this year's governor's race said the new
And it'll
tax...
start with the 5 million not occupied second or third properties. And then all of a sudden they'll go down to 1 million or 750,000 and start charging people that are renting them out. Watch. There's a downward spiral.
Backfire.
They're going to take their money someplace else.
Right.
And that means some carpenter's not going to get a job. Some plumber's not going to get a job.
The restaurants in the neighborhood are going to lose
Right.
business. Hochul says the extra revenue is needed to help the city close a $5 billion budget gap.
Which they refuse to stop spending money in, right? So you got this massive budget with a massive gap. You can either tax your residents to fill that hole, or you can just spend less money on stuff that doesn't matter, on free services for folks that in some cases are in America without permission. Like, why are we doing that? You could save a lot of money if you just said, hey, New York City services are only for people that are in America legally. Right there, you'd probably save $5 billion, but we don't want to do that. We don't even want to think about that. And then there's all the other stuff we waste money on, all the other initiatives and things that go nowhere, like the free grocery stores that we're going to pay $30 million for a free grocery store. One of them is going to cost $30 million, let alone the other four that haven't even been imagined yet.
And some New Yorkers seem to
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Phoenix Energy.
And some New Yorkers seem to embrace the idea of out-of-town owners paying more.
I think they should pay taxes to the city of New
They
York.
do.
They're using our services.
They do.
Police department, fire, and walking on our sidewalks. Why shouldn't they pay?
Okay, so they already pay. It's not like they're paying nothing right now. These people are already getting hit harder than anybody else. And you got to remember, it starts at the top and then it trickles down to the rest of us. That's why we have an income tax in this country that now affects everybody. At first, it was only supposed to affect the very rich. And now we all pay it, don't we? Tax.
Hey, baby, pay your bill because millions on welfare depend on it. We got fraud to pay for, money going to other countries that give us absolutely nothing in return. Oh, and don't forget the $40 million a week that we're still giving to the Taliban as of today.
Yeah.
The good news is it's less bad this year than it was over the last 4 years.
Unless you live in New York.
Thanks to promises made, promises kept, through the working families tax cuts, the president has delivered the record refunds to the American people.
Yeah, it's
The
better.
average refund this filing season is over $3,400.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And yes, Trump's big, beautiful bill stole less money from us in taxes because, again, tax changes is theft. But
right.
Don't ever celebrate a tax refund, folks. I would rather under withhold all year and pay at the end of the year, because if you get a tax refund, it's because you gave the government an interest-free loan all year. And this is probably the first time I've ever heard the government say this or understand it, that you and I know how to spend our money better than the government.
Right.
President Trump and Republicans in Congress have always believed that the American people know how to spend their money better than the government does.
Thank you, Caroline.
New
The best
concept.
part about this is the government steals more money from you by forcing you to do the work for them. And the average American actually spends 13 hours and almost $300 to file their taxes. I mean, think about what a...
And listen, this is federal taxes that he's talking about, yes. But in New York and New York City, the fact that you've got highest taxes in the entire country certainly doesn't help people live affordably. And the idea that we're going to come in with a whole bunch of affordability initiatives and increase the one thing that hurts all of us, and it's not just on the millionaires. We've tried raising the property taxes. Residents have been upset about that. Every single thing being done in New York to make it more affordable is going to do the exact opposite. And look, living costs here are about to go way up. Watch. It's crazy.
Thousands of the city's doorpersons, porters, supers, and handy persons rallied along Park Avenue from 79th Street to several blocks north. They voted for the option to strike come the morning of April 21st if the new contract isn't agreed upon by the time the current one expires April 20th.
We've sat at the table 4 times, and we have 5 days until this expiration. We do not have one single agreement on anything of contention. They refuse to move on even the most essential parts of this contract.
Let us demonstrate what it is when working people come together and fight for what it is that they deserve.
By paying higher taxes so that everyone can have access to free things handed out by the government. You see, that's the whole problem here. That's why we're going broke, and we don't want to admit it. That's why every single tax proposal that we've ever gotten has started out as, oh, it's just for the rich people, which is what the mayor ran on, and then, oh, property owners are going to have to fill in the blanks if he doesn't get the wealth tax, which he still didn't get, by the way. Yes, this is a wealth tax on the second homes of wealthy people, but it's not what the mayor really wants.
More than 34,000 members of the Service Employees International Union Local 32BJ say their wages, healthcare costs, and retirement benefits need to reflect the rising rates of inflation. The president of the Realty Advisory Board on Labor Relations declined an interview, but said in a statement the real estate industry is facing mounting pressures, including the likelihood of 0% rent increases on stabilized units for years to come.
That's the problem. So the mayor wants to freeze rents in the city, and this is what they're talking about, 0% increases. So no more rent increases, yet everybody that's unionized and works at these buildings wants the frozen rent, and they want raises to go along with it. This is like the most ludicrous situation I've ever seen. There's just no money for this kind of thing. You have to let the rents go up if you want to give raises to the people that work at the buildings, because those rent stabilized units, they're already underwater. You've already got buildings that are so bad they can't make any money, and they're going bankrupt because they have most of their units with a government regulation that stops them from making money. Meanwhile, if that landlord owns another building, he's got to raise the rents over there to get the money to pay for over here. You see, the whole system is screwed up, and it's the government that's in the way.
You know, but there's two things in our city. 2% of the people, we said that before, pay 48% of the taxes in New York City and New York State. And if those people reach the oh crap level or whatever, that's what the president says, oh crap, so I can say that. What happens? They're gonna keep the exodus will keep going on.
There is an exodus.
We don't want the exodus to go on.
Wait a second. Mandami says that this threat of rich people leaving, that is imaginary.
It's fake.
That's his word. He basically said they're not gonna leave.
Well, you want to know something? Maybe the billionaires won't leave,
right?
But the rich people will leave. That is the difference. The middle class that makes more than $500,000 a year, and there's a lot of them.
Yep.
And if the exodus continues, you know who gets penalized? New York City, New York State has 500,000 employees. If they leave, guess what? The 500,000 employees will have a problem. They'll start laying them off, and that's who gets penalized. And the pensions will have.
This could bankrupt the city.
And we want New York. There's two things that are not negotiable: the quality of life in New York. We want to be safe. We want to work.
We're not safe, but we do.
And we don't want to be any particular class should not be targeted.
Right.
Why are you targeting it?
Right. Why is somebody being punished for being in New York? Like, nobody should be punished for being in New York. The idea that if somebody's in New York and they do well, they should be punished is a stupid idea. Just like the idea that if somebody's in New York and they're not doing well, that nobody should take care of them. That's a stupid idea too. Why are we full of stupid ideas here?
But think about it. The rich are the class that's got the money, and the rest, the socialists want it. They're going to take it.
Well, guess what?
I think it's wrong.
Well, they might end up blowing up. And that's what the problem is.
Have a hope. Now, Mandami, he made I guess it was a surprising admission about the cost of what he sells in city-owned grocery stores. Watch this.
When it comes to the products that we will be selling at these city-run grocery stores, there will be an essential basket of goods that will be guaranteed at a cheaper price. And cheaper than what they're being sold at currently. I can't give you an exact example of the cost of a cucumber in our...
Doesn't know the cost of a cucumber, but he wants to raise taxes on everybody because they don't pay enough. And here's the crazy thing, this idea that, oh, we're just going after the rich. I mean, the mayor has brought up $23 billion worth of new taxes in his first week on the job, which is absolutely crazy. This just came out. And this is after threatening the 10% property tax, which would hit the middle class. Now look, the meat of his tax increases are calls to increase the city's tax rate, which is something most cities don't even have. They don't even have their own income tax, but we have ours. And this is actually supposed to be million, not billion. And then this corporate tax rate. So corporations that employ people who make less than $1 million, corporations employing people who aren't millionaires, they're gonna have to pay more money. What does that do? Where's that money gonna come from? It's gonna come from the employees. It's gonna increase unaffordability as it seeks to solve unaffordability. Now, the governor said that she opposes this, And now some people, even the local news stations here, they're rightfully calling this out. They're doing their job. They're doing journalism. They're saying that, hey, this is a flip-flop. But look, if you're the governor, you see people like this at every single one of your rallies screaming at you to come out and do something and do what Mamdani wants. But then when she does, they hit her again. Watch this. Listen to this.
Just conceded on a pied-à-terre tax, a tax on luxury second homes in New York City, like the ones behind me in 432 Park Avenue, where $25 million apartments sit empty. Not that long ago, she said she would never tax the rich. This shows that our movement has power. We can win more, and we have to, because millions of lives hang in the balance. Our city is facing a budget crisis to the tune of billions of dollars, and the pied-à-terre tax accounts for less than 1/10 of our city's budget deficit.
Right. It's not enough. See, this is the local New York City Democrat Socialists. They're saying the government or the governor conceded, and this is breaking through. So they're pushing for more taxes, and this is Zoran Mamdani's political affiliation. He was very honest about that. He didn't try to hide it, but you got to understand, this is who's running New York right now. The governor, it looks like, isn't running New York, even though she's in charge, because this is who the voter base is. And if she wants to win re-election, how does she do that? If these people are angry. And I realize that a person who's got a penthouse worth $230 million can probably afford to pay extra money, but the point is, they're going to get sick of affording everybody else's bills and all the free stuff the city wants, and they're going to take their money somewhere else. And you've got an entire real estate industry in this city that is built around these luxury properties and these penthouses where you can only have one at the very tippity top of a building anyways. And what's going to happen when those people leave? And when there aren't as many buyers for those properties, the values of those are going to tank. These buildings are going to be worth less. This has the potential to wipe out wealth in more ways than anybody is comfortable talking about. What do you think about that? I will see you in the next video.
As the world turns in New York, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health. It'll bring down inflammation, help you control your lipid profile. Very important. And Myotrol. Myotrol will help you to build muscle and maintain muscle. Once you turn about age 40, you can't build muscle and you start to lose muscle more rapidly. Myotrol will help to build muscle, maintain it. Why? Because it helps with the gene expression to build that muscle. When you get older, you methylate genes and the gene expression either is non-existent or is radically diminished. That's part of the aging process. But if you follow my advice and you slow down that methylation, you're actually going to have genes that are expressed, your epigenetics will be expressed like when you were younger. So Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans. So it will help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Myotrol, and you will build muscle and maintain muscle. Not only will you benefit by having denser bone and more musculature, but it will also help with brain function. Why? By building muscle, you're increasing your myokines, and myokines are neuroprotective. In addition, your concentrations of BDNF will increase, which is neuroprotective, and help with building up those neural connections. So for better brain function, you need to improve your musculature. But you get other benefits by having more musculature. You're improving your bone density. You can move around more. In addition, when you're improving your musculature, you're improving venous return flow, especially when you're improving your leg muscles. So you're helping with your cardiovascular health. When you improve your back muscles, you're improving your posture. You're going to have better lymphatic flow. So your immune system will be better because of better posture. And your venous return flow to your heart will improve compared to someone that's hunched over all the time. So you get a lot of benefits by building up muscle. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. If you're an athlete, you'll benefit from Myotrol also by getting strength for your sport. I also have a probiotic in VeggieCap form, which is in my hand. I also have a powdered version. With a good probiotic, you're improving your gut biome and allowing you to absorb your nutrients. You're also improving your immune system at the gut level and reducing allergies. A lot of people's allergies are due to poor gut health. In addition, you'll be able to sleep better. You'll get rid of that brain fog. And with better sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. Your brain function will improve with better gut biome. Your metabolism will improve also. Your skin will improve. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the VeggieCap probiotics or the powdered version of it. And lastly, collagen. Collagen will help to remodel your joints if you have arthritis or a sports injury. This will help to remodel the cartilage and the cushioning of the joint. By using, to remodel the cartilage, it's using collagen type 2 and glucosamine. It helps to recruit glucosamine. Now, to remodel the cushioning of the joint, it's using chondroitin and also ACAN. Now, when you have inflammation at the joint level, certain enzymes are produced to erode the joint because of that inflammatory response. You want to block those enzymes to stop the joint erosion. Those enzymes that collagen blocks are MMP3 and MMP13. In addition, collagen also blocks the inflammation that's created by Ep4. And when you're doing that, you're also reducing the pain in the joint. So if you want to remodel your joints because of arthritis or because of a sports injury, please go to my store and get the collagen. You can stack this with the collagen that I have, the powdered collagen. So you have the ingredients to help to remodel also the joint. I recommend that if you have a joint issue, that what you want to do is slowly open up that joint or close it, depending on if it's a flex or an extension issue of the joint. Sometimes it's both. And you open it up to that point where there's pain and go just a little bit more and hold it for about 20 seconds and then release and do it another time, 20 seconds and then release. Maybe do that 2 or 3 times a day. And when you do that, over time, you'll be able to open up farther and farther without pain. It takes time. And the longer that you've had the problem, the longer it will take to remodel. So the key is that once you have the problem, start this protocol and you'll be able to heal it quicker. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen and also get the collagen. Make sure that you use discount 5 so you can save some money. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All righty. Let's listen into Victor Hansen's little take on the total revolt that's going on in the alt-right movement.
They put the plate down like it's a piece of art. They make me feel that way.
If you'd have told me 20 years ago that I would have done my Broadway debut.
Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. The left is making quite a deal of attention to what they call the anti-MAGA right, that is, former staunch supporters of Donald Trump that have now parted ways with him. And the names that they fixate on, the left, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who resigned from Congress after a big fight with Donald Trump over the Epstein files and the Iraq War. Tucker Carlson, the former Fox news host, and now has become a fierce Trump critic. Megyn Kelly, who had a Fox, very successful Fox show herself, and then went to NBC and now has a very successful podcast. And she seems to have parted ways with Donald Trump over the same issues as Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson. Then, of course, Joe Rogan has expressed disappointment. Perhaps he is now not in the MAGA fold. Candace Owens has been a virulent critic. Steve Bannon, I don't know what his status is, but there's a group of people. And then further to the right, of course, there's the Groypers and Nick Fuentes and all those people. But what was their beef? The first thing that seems to really bother them is the current war. I shouldn't say the first thing. The first thing that bothered some of them was the summer 2025 attack by the United States for about 25 hours on the nuclear facilities in Iran. It was a one-off. Tucker Carlson said this was unnecessary. It could lead to World War III. It didn't. It did retard the progression of nuclear acquisition. Then new information came in that they had much more ballistic missiles than had been anticipated, and there may have been other areas where they had stored nuclear material. So then that reopened negotiations this year to remove those peacefully. They didn't work, and so then the United States began at the end of February bombing, and now we're in the 6th week, and they feel that that is a forever war and an endless war. But it's a very funny forever war, isn't it? I mean, if you look at it, there's been tragically 13 Americans killed, but it's not 4,000 or 5,000 as we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan. 7,000 total, perhaps another 20,000 casualties. It's an air war, almost exclusively an air war, except for the rescue of the pilot. And it's completely asymmetrical. We have destroyed, as people have said, their Navy except for their patrol boats, which I think will be destroyed shortly if they try to interrupt traffic any further in the Strait. We've destroyed their Air Force. We've destroyed their missile defense. We've taken out the first and second tier of the Islamic Republican Guard Corps, the regular army, the theocrats, and even some of the politicians. So their command and control is in disarray, and we have suffered really no major downfall other than politics. The future of that war is entirely political. I mean, the United States is at liberty to do what they want, whatever the military feels is necessary to disarm Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons and to stop its ballistic missile potential. But it's a political question, just a question of what's the effect on the world economy, what's the effect on the American economy, and more importantly, how does that affect the midterms and the future of the Trump presidency? But people are conflating those and suggest that militarily it's a defeat. That's absurd. What else did this new group of critics, this new old group of critics, get angry about? Trump tweeted that if Iran had not met these conditions and were not going to negotiate, then he would destroy their civilization. It's pretty poorly worded. And they felt that this was beneath him, beneath the United States. They joined the left in saying that this was outrageous. The left took him literally, not figuratively. But I don't think anybody believed he meant all of the Iranian people. We know that because, of course, as I had said earlier, no president has avoided dual-use civilian targets as much as Trump. We didn't do it in World War II. We hit every civilian target we could, from power plants to highways to water facilities to oil production. In Germany and Japan, we did it again in Korea. We did it certainly in Vietnam. We took out all the bridges in the Danube in the 99 bombing under Clinton. And of course, we knocked out the power grid of Belgrade, 1.5 million people several times. We did the same thing in Libya. We denied we did it, but we hit civilian ships, we hit port facilities, we hit TV stations. Trump hasn't done that except for one bridge. So he didn't really, his record shows that he doesn't believe he wants to destroy the civilization. In fact, it's just the opposite. And I think his critics know that, or he wouldn't have said help is on the way. Help is on the way. The whole subtext of this entire campaign is while regime change is not the primary agenda, he hopes that by weakening and humiliating this theocracy, then the people will rise up, and that's why he's selected targets that would allow them to rise up and not hurt the people. So was it an overstatement? Yes, but they should know better what he meant. Of course he did, because his deeds prove what he meant. So what's going on here? I think part of the problem is in the intimacy that some people on the right have cultivated and developed with Trump. In other words, if you're going to campaign with Trump, if you're going to be a regular visitor at Mar-a-Lago with Trump, if you're going to be an intimate of the family, and if you're going to work with him and you're a news person, then you feel, it's apparently that Steve Bannon felt that way. Maybe Tucker feels that way. Maybe Megan feels that way. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene felt that way. But if you feel that you have a special relationship, then you feel downcast or betrayed because you're not only your president, but your friend and associate that you helped didn't quite agree with you. But it's always better to have some distance so you can be empirical. And if you're empirical, then the question is, what's the alternative to Donald Trump's MAGA agenda? Because if you look at the border, it's closed. If you look at illegal immigration, he has deported 500,000 criminals. Another million have self-deported. He's in the process of probably finishing another 500,000 deportees. We should have 2 million. We've never done that before. If you look at energy right now, the United States has never produced so much oil and gas, and we're right on the verge of a nuclear energy renaissance, and we're going in Alaska, we're going offshore, we're trying to get more oil and gas in California. For all practical purposes, at least for now, DEI is dead. No other president would have done that. This reverse racism or this tribal shamanism that has so plagued the nation, Donald Trump ended that. He has put the universities on notice that they cannot continually defy civil rights laws and Supreme Court decisions. No one did that before. As far as transgenderism, they're on the defensive now. The idea that biological men will dominate female sports and men with biological male characteristics will dress among women is over. So what I'm getting at is this. All of these critics agree with what Donald Trump has done on 80% of the issues, at least their record says they do. So why, on one particular issue in which you disagree, and it's very doubtful that you can categorize this a forever or endless war. It's much more in the flavor of the Venezuela, the Soleimani, the Baghdadi, the ISIS bombing. It is not anything near fighting house to house in Fallujah or going into hostile villages in Helmand province. We're not on the ground. We're not fighting on the jihadist turf. We're using our strength, air power, and a distance from to mitigate casualties and inflict greater damage on the theocracy. It's not a forever endless war, and they know that. So if you are apostates from the whole Trump agenda because of your disagreement about this one particular issue, and you feel that he betrayed you because you categorize it a forever or endless war, which he promised to avoid, then you're nullifying the entire agenda. And what is the alternative? A Kamala Harris agenda? I don't know. An Eric Swalwell agenda? A Gavin Newsom agenda that's antithetical to everything these people have stood for and lobbied for and advanced for. And so if you sit out the midterms, or you figuratively or in your advocacy, if you sit out or you oppose Trump, de facto, whether you know it or not, you're favoring the alternate agenda. And that agenda is something that, at least in your recent positions, that you have adamantly opposed. Thank you very much. This is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal.
All right, that's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please go to my website and help support the work that I do by purchasing the great products that I offer. If you pay attention and stack them accordingly, you will slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system and help your other bodily systems. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.